Can you take me higher? Get Creed stuck in my head.
I see Saint for Life already chiming in. Saints are an absolute train wreck. Podcast started and ended. Boom.
Expect a lot of that sentiment. That's I have a feeling that's going to be the theme. I think I titled this episode, "Why Can't We Have Nice Things?" And that's kind of what it feels like. It's just anytime. I think Bobby phrased it well. It's like, oh yeah, this is great, and then the next day it's like, oh my god, this is the worst. And then it's like, okay, fine, yeah, okay, no, and it's like, this sucks. I don't know. I texted you this morning. I was like, I'm just so tired of talking about this team, and I am. It's just not fun to talk about this team. It's not fun to watch this team. It's not fun to do much around this team. But anyway, we'll get into that. We don't have to.
Yeah, too much yin yang going on.
You mean yo-yo?
That too, yeah. Yeah.
Yin yang, like the yin, that's supposed to be a good thing. That's like balance, right? That's the whole idea.
Yeah, you're right. Balance. There's been no balance. You're right. Yeah, yo-yo is better.
Kind of the opposite of what you're actually trying to say.
Yeah.
You got the Y's. The Y's are in there. Yeah, it's up and down, up and down, up and except it's like a yo-yo that has a knot halfway up the string because you never quite get to the top. It's like you're just yo-yoing from the bottom to the middle and then back to the bottom. Can't do any tricks that way. Every now and then you start walking the dog, but then it's like, well, it's not cool if you don't get it back. Like it doesn't count. You can walk the dog all day long, but if you don't get it back up to your hand, you're just messing around with a rock on a string. It's not the same. I don't know.
Your black and gold yo-yo podcast.
Yeah. But yeah, they do play Creed at the end of the Vikings games when they win, apparently. I don't know if that's a Josh Dobbs thing or now it's a Vikings thing, but it gets stuck in your head. I don't even like Creed, but that song's a banger.
I do think it is a Josh Dobbs thing, so now obviously now it's a Vikings thing. I don't blame them.
Yeah. It's yeah. Man. Okay. So this is going to be a long episode. So let's just get it rolling. We don't need to vamp because we're going to be here for a while. So why don't you hit us with an intro and we'll dive in.
We are inside Black and Gold. Steve Geller along with Jeff Nowak on your NFC South leading podcast for your 5-5 Saints. Yeah.
This is a celebration podcast, right? Oh, yeah, we're only going to talk about nice things. That would be kind of hilarious, and everyone would be so mad if we just came on here and pretended that everything was great. I'm like, guys, this is fantastic. We're in first place. Aren't you excited? Oh my gosh. And it is like there's an alternate reality where you might feel that way, right? Like there's a universe where things could have gone a certain way and you're 5-5 at this point and you're like, oh, we got everything out in front of us. If it wasn't like the easiest schedule ever in the history of the NFL and anyway.
You weren't facing teams' best players.
Right. You didn't have a run of 3 backup quarterbacks that I guess it's like you did go 2-1. I think back before Kirk Cousins got hurt, I looked at this and I was like, if you go 2-1, you won't be too upset. And at the end of the day, the reason you're in first place is because you went 2-1. So like in that sense, it's just the way you got to that one is very frustrating. But all right, this is like you said, this is Inside Black and Gold. So we're gonna change the format here a little bit. So we're gonna do this first segment. We're gonna give you some updates on injuries, what Dennis Allen talked about. I wanted to wait until he spoke to record this because I didn't want to give you outdated injury information. So we're going to deal with a lot of that in the first segment. Second segment, we are going to talk about what didn't work, kind of how we've been doing it the last few weeks. I think it's worked. So we'll continue that. Third segment, what did work and some positives from this game to going forward. There aren't a ton of them. It'll be a short segment. But that'll wrap up this episode of the podcast. But if you're watching on YouTube, there will be a secondary episode where we're going to go through a mailbag and turn that into a separate episode. So if you want to get into that mailbag, stick around for the fourth segment or come back if you don't feel like hanging around. Get questions in there, and we will try to get to as many as we can. I'm sure there will be a lot of them. Everyone's going to have a lot of opinions. So that's why we want to break that off into kind of its own episode so we don't feel like, man, this podcast is 2 hours long and no one's going to listen to that. So we can break it up. Anyway, so let's get into it. First, I will say one good thing about the trip up to Minnesota is I went to a very fancy steakhouse that had a very good meal. It was the highlight of that trip. because it didn't get any better the next day. One thing that I will say is I've been thinking about this. At a certain point, restaurants are just expensive to be expensive. Because, like, I know how much a bottle of bourbon costs,
Right.
And so why are you charging me $27
For an old fashioned?
No, not even an old fashioned. If it was an old fashioned, you could at least sell me on the fact that the bartender did some work and I should be paying the bartender.
They're just getting it straight.
I just got a bourbon rocks, right?
Yeah.
So I think, and it was Bullet, right? I know how much a bottle of Bullet bourbon costs. It was $27. What the hell are you doing, guys? This has nothing to do with the Saints, but this podcast is gonna be so miserable. I just want to get to something first. So, like, in my head, it's like, what if you would allow me to, I could go buy a bottle of Bullet, come in here, hand it to the bartender, and say, "Okay, I'm gonna drink out of this. You can keep the rest." But like that would be cheaper than buying 2 drinks at this restaurant. It's just funny because it's like, if like the cow is expensive, right? Like my steak costs $70 by itself, but you can at least sell me. It's like this cow was treated like a king until we chopped it up to serve it to you. Like you're not giving me special bourbon. You're giving me the bottle I can get at Costco. Anyway, that's it. Either way, it was very good.
Restaurants are able to get away with that markup on liquor ridiculously.
Yeah, it's crazy, but yeah, I mean, I had 2 drinks. It was $47 for the drinks. Anyway, Manny's Steakhouse was very good. So anyway, that was a prime cut. The game was not a prime cut for a lot of reasons.
Chuck.
And that's the segue back into the fact that this is a football podcast, not a steakhouse podcast. But man, so we talk a lot about how the Saints have had good luck with injuries outside of, the other NFC North road trip where Derek Carr left with he didn't have a concussion in that game, but he left with a right shoulder injury. This game, you had Mike Thomas go out after the second play of the game. Dennis Allen said he took a helmet to the knee, and it just didn't have him the rest of the way. So then Derek Carr goes out. I think in this game he went out with about 7 minutes left in the third quarter. In the Packers game, he went out with about 10 minutes left in the third quarter. So it was almost kind of a shot-for-shot remake, with the exception of in the Packers game, you were ahead 17-0 when he went out. In this game, you were behind by 21 when he went out. So that's the other injury. And then Marshon Lattimore went off the field with a ankle sprain. He left the game, did not come back. So, and those are only the significant injuries. Like, it felt like every play someone was hobbling off the field. And like, so I know Alontae Taylor went into the injury tent at one point. Malcolm Roach went into the injury tent at one point. A.T. Perry went into the injury tent. Chris Olave was clearly dealing with something in the second half of that game. You could really tell in between plays, and I don't know how much they showed on the broadcast, but like he would be fine during the play, because you can kind of, the adrenaline of a play can get you through a play, but in between, when he was kind of walking in and out of the huddle, you could see he was kind of limping a little bit. I don't know if that's that toe injury that he was dealing with previously. Looked like Rashid Shaheed was dealing with something. It was just every player seemed like they had something going on. And, I know Mike Thomas retweeted a tweet about how the Vikings turf is like, terrible, and they're replacing it after this year. And it's like the NFLPA has deemed it like more dangerous than other types of turf in terms of lower body injuries. And, I believe it, because that game was crazy from an injury perspective.
Yeah, it's wild that it's acknowledged by the NFLPA. You think like there'd be some kind of like expedited, whatever to try and replace that as soon as possible, because we're so concerned about the safety of our players.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's happening next season, so you can't do it in season, right? It takes a little while. And it's actually, you have to pack it down, right? Like you can't just play on new turf immediately. That's I don't know if people know this. Tulane practices at the Superdome in the off season, or at least they did this off season. And one of the reasons is because they replaced the turf, and they want Tulane out to run around on it out there, and and to pack it all down so that it's not, when you get out there for the first time for the Saints, it's not just all fresh. I know they've had like marching bands practice there too. Like it takes a little bit more than just replacing the turf. And with US Bank, it's obviously indoors, although you could probably have natural grass in there. I mean,
it felt like on TV with the light shining in, it felt like an outside game there.
yeah, I mean, half the stadium is glass. Like I find it hard to believe you couldn't survive grass in there. Even if you just had to add some mirrors to make sure every corner gets touched by the by the light. I don't know. Is that how chlorophyll works? Anyway, but moving on. So we got updates from Dennis Allen today on the injuries. He said that Derek's injury, he's in the concussion protocol, which is obviously difficult. But he does have 2 weeks to come back. So you'd imagine that he'll probably be okay to come back for week 12. The right shoulder injury is not a thing. Like, it's just something I think they were being precautious. Is precautious a word? Am I saying that? Yeah, there was some precaution going on with that, but it wasn't anything significant. So from a shoulder perspective, he'll be fine. Mike Thomas and Marshon Lattimore, he termed them as, quote, fairly significant, which that's kind of the difference for DA in terms of, he calls them not significant, significant, fairly significant. That's kind of his tiers of injuries. So I imagine him saying that both of those guys would probably not play this week if they had a game. Now, 2 weeks, that's another question. I think Marshon's injury is the one you're a little more worried about. Ian Rappaport called it a high ankle sprain, and high ankle, anytime you hear ankle sprain, you want to hear low ankle sprain. Anytime it's a high ankle sprain, that's a lot more lingering, right? It just takes longer to come back from. And ankles are just tough. I mean, if you've ever had an ankle injury, I've had my fair share of them. It's one of those things where you feel like it's right, and then all of a sudden you try to put pressure on it, like you're going full speed. Like I got them playing basketball a lot, and then you'll land and it'll just go, and you're right back to square one. And that's why ankle injury is such a pain. The good news for the Saints is Ike Yadim. You know what to expect from him. You did see him for 3 games or 2 games. How many games did Paulson miss? You saw him earlier this season when Paulson Adebo missed some time, and he graded out as one of the top cornerbacks in the NFL over that span. He was very good. So obviously, if Marshon can't go, you lose a lot going to your backup, but you do at least have, it's not like you're starting Chris Harris or some rookie that you've never seen before. Like last year, you had to kind of throw Alante into the fire, and he played well, but you didn't know what to expect. This year, now you at least know what to expect, and hopefully it's not something that keeps him out for too long.
With Dennis Allen too mentioning, I don't think you brought up, they're not season ending, but and he also mentioned second opinions for Mike and Mike T and Lattimore, obviously. So I don't know if when you hear significant, I don't know, it's going for a second opinion. Luckily, not season ending. I'm just wondering even if both of those guys are going to be ready after the bye week.
I don't see anything as being, season injury ending or anything like that, but, we're still going through kind of some second opinions and things of that nature. So without really having all that, I really don't want to get into timelines and things like that.
Timeline.
Yeah, he learned from last year not to get into timelines with Mike, and that's the thing. It's like with Mike, it's just you don't want to take any risks, right? And so I don't know, like second opinions in that typically you're talking about surgery versus no surgery, right? And so I don't know if you were looking at it and saying that this needs surgical remediation to fix, then you probably would be talking about a season-ending injury. And I know, and Nick Underhill, who gets this, he gets the injury stuff real fast. I think he talked to Mike and he reported that it wasn't a significant injury. And then, we were tweeting about what Dennis Allen said, and he's like, well, I guess Nick got bad information. It's like, that's not, like when you're talking about knee stuff or, ankle injuries, you really don't know until they do some imaging tests. So Mike could be there and saying, like, my knee is fine.
Right. It's no big deal.
You could have some like a minor tear of the MCL or anything like that he probably wouldn't even register because he didn't go back and play at full speed. There's no way for him to really know what his knee will do when he goes back out there. So hopefully that there wasn't anything significant on the imaging test, but clearly it sounds like, you're gonna have to brace for maybe some missed time there. One of the other things that Dennis Allen talked about was he doesn't anticipate any staffing changes, which I'm not surprised by that. If you're surprised by that by now, that's on you. It's kind of
Right. You don't know this team then, right?
Yes. Fool me once, fool me twice kind of thing. It's like this is a pass-fail class. The people in the building are going to either fix it or fail with it, and you're going to go from there. The bigger question is, are you going to see any changes on the field? I know Stan Verrett feels like Jameis should be the starter. He was very loud about it on Twitter. Stan's a big Saints fan. And he was talking about how they should go to Jameis. And I saw a few people saying they should go to Jameis. We'll talk more about Jameis in the what did work segment, because I think he did enough to land in there. Even though those last 2 interceptions, there was a lot of things to criticize, particularly on that last one. But I think he did give them a spark. And so you ask, okay, maybe you look at it and say, we'll think about this. We'll look at it. We'll have a conversation and say, maybe this is the moment that you turn to him. But if you kind of look at what Dennis Allen had to say about it after the game, I think you get a pretty clear answer as to what they're actually talking about there.
Well, we'll see where Derek's at. I mean, I don't think we're. Well, I know we're not in a competition there. I thought Jameis did some good things, but Derek Carr's our starting quarterback.
Did Mike get hurt on?
Yeah, and I found that entertaining because you can. He like that thought clearly had never even crossed his mind.
Oh, we got to see where Derek is. I mean.
Well, you could tell that when he was initially asked the question, he kind of took it as, do you think Derek will be ready to start in 2 weeks?
Right.
And halfway through his answer, he was like, oh, wait, they're actually asking me if I think I'm going to reevaluate my starting quarterback.
There's no competition.
Like, you know what? Absolutely not. And like, to me, it's like, so you wonder, would Dennis Allen consider going to Jameis? And I think, no. I don't. I really don't. I don't think that's a conversation that's happening internally. And you can argue that that's wrong. And, I think that it is wrong. You should be having that conversation. But I don't think that for a second you should sit there holding your breath for Jameis to be the star. They wouldn't go. I mean, they went to Andy Dalton last year and they stuck with Andy Dalton for 14 games. If you're not going to Jameis then, you really think they're going to go to Jameis now? Absolutely not. Right? Like, it's just not what they're going to do. You could say that's the wrong decision, and you can make a very valid argument that's the wrong decision based on what we have seen. But I'm just living in the reality that they have set for us, right?
It's like, we had a cheap Andy Dalton then. Now we have an expensive Andy Dalton now. We're not going away from him.
Right. And so here's the other thing. It's like, if the idea is, DA's trying to make decisions to save his job, again, like we've talked about this. I'm pretty sure we've said this exact thing before. Going to Jameis is not, you're still going to, if you're going to fire DA unless things get turned around, it's got to happen with Derek. If you go to Jameis and suddenly that $150 million investment, which I think the $150 million number gets brought up way too often.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, it doesn't really affect anything. Like, show me the players that aren't here because you're paying Derek. Because I don't see any. Like, I don't see anyone who went out the door for any reason other than someone paid them way above market. You signed free agents, you kept micro. So like that number I don't care about, but down the road you care about it. You aren't, if you're changing that now, if you're cutting bait after 10 games, then you are starting from scratch. So if you're thinking, oh, DA is going to think, practically and say, well, we can maybe win some games with Jameis. It's like, no, you're getting fired if you do that. Because that just doesn't make sense. Like Derek and DA are kind of a package deal, right?
Yeah, and I think, like you mentioned, we saw it last year when it looked like, hey, Jameis is ready to come back and play, and Pete and DA were both like, nah, not so much.
Yeah, and I think Jameis played pretty well. I mean, that throw across the field was an absolutely unhinged decision. Let's be real. Like I saw some, the takes on it were kind of funny because I saw some people saying, what a great decision and great throw. And then but I think there is a balance there where you're like, no, that's a bad decision. I saw somebody be like, yeah, Drew Brees would never have made that play because Drew Brees would never have made that throw. And it was a great throw, right? And that's the thing. It was a bad decision, but it was an absolute dime of a throw,
Right.
right? And I know this because if you watch the replay of it, you can see I happen to be standing like right at the corner of the end zone, like kind of where the tunnel is. And I was just watching. I was like, they completely ignored A.T. Perry. And I was like, oh man, if only Jameis hadn't rolled out the opposite direction, this would be a touchdown. Like I literally had that thought flip through my brain in the split second before he just reared back and chucked it. You know, you saw that 90 something mile an hour fastball coming out there, like back in his Florida State days. He just hurled that thing, and you could tell AT was surprised by it. Like he had a kind of a late reaction. I think that actually helped him
The
to
ball
actually
brought
make.
him.
Well, I don't know if that's the case, but you talk about late hands, right? He kind of had like an unintentional case of late hands where the DB wasn't looking back for the ball. And so because he reacted late, that allowed him to get up there and make that catch, or at least get his hands on it first. I don't even know why we're talking about this, but like I thought Jameis, he did well. I think he did what you need your backup to do in that situation, which is come in, just go for it, right? I was talking to Mike Haas after the game. It's like, I've never actually seen a team pull off what the Saints looked like they were on the verge of pulling off in that game, which is coming back from a 24-point deficit in 3 scores. You know what I mean?
No, it was like all of a sudden things started humming. And it was like touchdown, 2-point conversion, touchdown, 2-point conversion.
Well,
and
right.
then you had belief again. Suddenly, like, holy crap, we can do this.
Well, I mean, they cut it to 1 score with like 11 minutes left. Like there was so much time. And the problem is, like, it kind of felt like, they were not prepared to be within 1 score that early, and they never got out of the mode where they were in complete go for it. And it's like, no, just run your offense now. Like, you don't have to get it all right here. You can just run an offense. But it felt like they were just they were just locked into that idea of like, oh, we got to score fast. We got to keep going. We can't. It's like, no, you're only down 1 score. But like I said, I don't think I've seen teams try to execute that where you score and you get a 2-point conversion. But I don't think I have ever seen a team pull it off in coming all the way back from 24. I'm sure it's happened, but like I've never witnessed it. And it was like, because you could tell the fans were like at 24 points up, they're like, it's over, like we're celebrating. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait a second.
You heard more Creed music coming in?
Well, the Creed music didn't start until the second interception. That's when the Creed music came in.
Gotcha.
But it was a little bold because that Hail Mary, I was a little closer to, I mean, that was a great throw. Like that's exactly what you want to do with that Hail Mary, right? Like you get it right to the front of the end zone where everyone's kind of battling. The only issue for the Saints is you don't have, it's like Marquez Callaway was always really good at that. Like I think that's a situation where you miss him. He caught a Hail Mary against Washington. Jimmy Graham wasn't active. So I saw someone be like, why wasn't Jimmy in there?
Who's that? I don't even know who that is.
He didn't even have pads on. He couldn't go in there. But yeah, he would have been nice to have in that scenario, right? Wouldn't that have been nice to have your 6'5" tight end just standing there taller than everybody else?
Just saying.
Yeah, but that's basically the end of that segment, and there's going to be injury questions. There's going to be questions about personnel. Do you make any offensive line changes? Do you maybe shift back to James Hurst at left tackle? I don't think Andres Pete had a particularly good game, but that's just the Vikings make life really difficult on you. There's going to be some interesting questions going forward, but from a health perspective, I think that's going to be the biggest thing to watch. Is does Marshon and Mike miss any time, and if they do, how long? What do you do in their absence? A.T. Perry's probably going to get more run. I think he earned it. And Ike Adam, and then maybe I don't know what you do at the corner position. Who's your next man up at corner behind Ike? That's going to be an interesting question. But otherwise, you're just going to have to roll with it and see what happens.
No, and I know a lot of the talk at the beginning of the season, we were, projecting what should we expect? What do you think will happen with Michael Thomas? And well, we just about made it to double-digit games, and that's what all I was asking for out of him. So I guess I should be impressed he's made it this far. But yeah, that's a tough out for him there. Obviously, the weekend he had with an arrest, and then what he took it was a helmet to the knee, right? That basically caused the injury.
Well, so I thought at first he might have been dealing with a rib issue because that first play of the game, he took a shot right to the midsection and he dropped the ball. The second play was apparently the one where he got hurt. And there's that little slant, which is like a slant. And you got to, I think they got first down. Yeah, I think it was a nice little play. And, it's funny because we talked, it's like one of those situations where earlier in the season, he was like, I like getting hit. Let me get hit. The Patriots game, for example, he took some big shots.
Yeah.
And he was just like, yeah, throw me that ball. I want that ball. But that's why you need to protect your receivers a little bit. But yeah.
Yeah, that'll obviously, we just saw Mike deal with a whole slew of injuries and fight through them to get back. And it looked like, we were finally past those foot issues, and now this crap happens with the knee issue.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I don't think it's season ending, right? Like the DA said that if it was anything that was, major surgical, I don't think he would have come out and said that. So hopefully it is something that, they were just being again precautious. I don't even know if that's the word, but you get it. And
poor Mike is now just rehabbing and sitting in his living room looking out for those construction workers outside.
He'll have plenty of time to worry about
who's off my lawn.
Yeah. We didn't even talk about that. That's a weird situation, but I don't think we need to. I mean, it's like it's going to be one of those situations where people are like, oh my gosh, it's like he got in a dispute with a contractor who was being a dick.
Right, exactly.
Like I've been there, I'm not Mike Thomas. So no one writes about it when it happened. No one calls the cops on me when I yell at the contractor next to my house. Anyway.
Well, that's what I think is being a little blown out of proportion. People are like, oh, those Saints receivers. All right. One of them got a speeding ticket and the other one got into an argument.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
I'm not going to get worked up about it. Anyway. Okay. Let's finish that segment. We're going to come back and we're going to dive into what didn't work. What are we going to complain about the most? And there's plenty. So that's going to be probably the longer segment. Final segment, we're going to talk about what did work. What did we come away feeling good about? And then we're going to get into a mailbag in the extra segment at the end. So if you have any questions, comments, make sure to throw them in there. And we will try to get to as many as we can in the back end of this here program. This is Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. Stick around. All right, and we're back on Inside Black and Gold. And in this segment, this is going to be the more therapeutic of the segments. And it's going to be what didn't work.
Let it all out.
And, I was listening to Bobby's post-game rant, and he said something that I found entertaining because, I'm sure you kind of, I've said this to you so many times. And I just don't like it's something that has been continuing and continuing and continuing, and I have not seen them do anything to address it. And here, this is what Bobby had to say.
Again, the defense has played terrible 5 games in a row in the first half. I don't know. Did y'all notice this? Who that nation? Teams look faster than us. I mean, I'm like, listen. I know it's all NFL players you play at this level. Like one time, Alante Taylor did he not know? Maybe how fast Joshua Dobbs was. I mean, I thought he had the angle. I mean, he just ran right around him. We didn't even touch him. So that was discouraging there. I don't know. Teams just look faster than us. Nah,
They do. It's a problem. I don't know how many times I've said this, but I've said it at least a half dozen times. The Saints have a team speed problem on defense. And, it's tough because, DeMario is a great player. He's not the swiftest of linebackers in the NFL, right? Because you play man on the outsides, you kind of lose that when you're talking about tracking down the quarterback and getting him on the ground. And then you see just watching Cam chase these guys down and he just can't do it. Carl is a bit better of an athlete at this point in his career, but even he's not a guy who, I want in pursuit. If he can catch guys in the backfield every now and then, he's agile enough that like he can make plays in the backfield. But like you see it play after play. Even Pete Werner, like he was spying Josh a couple times in that game, and it was just like he's getting beat. A lot. I don't know. Like the funny thing is, you can say there's a team speed problem, and that's what I just did say. But like Alontae Taylor, you would imagine it's like this is a guy who should be at an advantage. Like he should be fast enough. And I don't know. They don't handle it well. That touchdown run, I still don't. I think it kind of reminded me of the Marcus May play against Tyson Bagent, the fourth down play where he got kind of lost and like there was no one behind him to cover, but he still kind of held. And it's like, just drive on him. He doesn't want to throw that ball. Make Josh Dobbs throw the ball. He wants to run. Force him to throw it. And instead, he just kind of sat back and didn't do either. He didn't take away either. It was just like, okay, like beat him to the corner. Do something. You can't just let him run untouched like a superhero. Like he's got Creed playing in his helmet. Man,
it felt like he was Neo, the one, and he just like was able to go through the matrix of our defense and just get into I was like, what is going on? I guess the speed issue reared its head. I know it seemed like a huge issue in the Jacksonville game too. Man, everybody on that team seemed faster on offense there. It's
been an issue all year, and it's just tough. Like you can't just fix that overnight. You guys don't get faster, right? Like I've said this before too, that I think one of the reasons they drafted Isaiah Foskey is because he is a very good athlete. He is faster on the edges. He can get out. He can stretch plays out, but you don't have him. He got hurt. Hopefully he comes back. And I think to me, that's what I want to see a lot more of is if you can get him back healthy and you can get him more in the rotation on pass rush downs, maybe he can be a little bit more effective in those situations. Like I want to see Cam on early downs, but I'm starting to wonder if Cam is the best option on pass downs.
Ouch.
It's just a fact. I mean, it's funny because everyone's like, oh, we're going to get crushed by the Lions. I don't know if that's the case because the Saints actually set up like that's the type of offense they want to face. They want to face a guy who's going to stand in the pocket.
I was going to say Goff ain't taking off, right?
Exactly. So, like, I think that's a game where they might actually go out and win it. They're going to surprise some people. It's at the Superdome, but then you face Josh Dobbs, and you're like, who the hell is this guy? He's a magician, And the funny thing is, like, Josh Dobbs did play well. Like, people are going to want to come out and say, well, the Saints defense just kind of laid an egg, and they did. But Josh played very well in that first half, and he played well last week. Like, I think he just fits in this offense. It's weird. But he just showed up, and it's like Kevin O'Connell's been missing this man his entire life. I mean, he runs that offense.
Seamless, right? It looks like peanut butter and jelly together, right?
Yeah, just goopy.
and not for nothing, obviously, can anybody guard Hawkinson? Anyone?
Only Hawkinson's own ribs. The only thing that could stop TJ Hawkinson was his own internal body injuries. Because he was feeling it. You could tell, like, there was multiple times.
Oh, yeah.
He got up and was just, like, hobbling over to the sideline. He went in the injury tent at least once. Maybe they gave him an extra shot of whatever he was on.
Something, right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure he got a shot pregame, right? So he was feeling numb, and then all of a sudden he took so I don't know how medically they might be blurring some lines there about how much painkillers you can take. But, yeah, he's very good. He is very good. And I mean,
he definitely looked like Gronk yesterday.
I have never seen a tight end I mean, he only had one catch in the second half, so maybe that the rib injury did kind of limit him a little bit
Take its
more as the
toll
game went
finally,
on.
right?
Well, especially like you go in for halftime, you kind of lose some of that,
Yeah.
that adrenaline, and then you come back
Right.
out, and it's like hurts a little bit more,
Yeah.
But he took some, like, they were getting him down, but they were getting him down hard. I know Tyron tackled him once and just like flipped him head over heels. That might have been the play that he got up gimpy. Because I think it was the one where they like checked to see if his elbow was down, inbounds or out of bounds. I don't know, but yeah, the team speed, like I said, is a major problem. One thing I asked DA about today is, we talk a lot about the first half defense, and it's been bad. It's been bad. They've gotten off to slow starts, but I think one of the things that makes it look a lot worse than it is you're allowing touchdowns. Like, I think we've seen in the past few years this defense be on the slower starting side, right? Like they have, if you go back and look at some of the games they've had some good defensive performances in, they've allowed a decent number of yards in the first half, but it's a lot of bend but don't break stuff. They get into the red zone and they lock down, and you're forcing field goals. And it's like, you can have a slow start as long as you're limiting them to threes. You did that in this game, but then you had 3 straight possessions where they drove the field and scored touchdowns. And so if you go back and you look at the red zone possessions, and I think that first possession wasn't technically a red zone possession. I think it ended right outside the red zone. So, because the Vikings were 2 for 2 in the red zone in the first half, the Saints have allowed 13 red zone trips over the last 5 games, which is a ridiculous number on its own. That is insane, because you're talking about you're only talking about 2 quarters. So that's 10 quarters of football. So that's really just 2.5 games. So you've effectively allowed 13 red zone trips over 2.5 games, which is crazy. And not only that, they've allowed 10 touchdowns. That's almost an 80% success rate in the red zone. 10 for 13 opposing teams are in the first half of the last 5 games on scoring touchdowns in the red zone. That's how you allow 24 points in the first half. Because if you you stop one of those, right? You hold them to 3 on one of those, it's 20, and it's more manageable. And suddenly you're looking at the second half and you score 2 touchdowns. You're right there. You're a field goal away. But no, you're not, because you allowed that touchdown before the half I think it was kind of an exhaustion thing more than anything else. But like, man, that was the backbreaker. That basically won the game for him.
Can the Saints drink their magic elixir that they get at halftime before the game? It's been maddening now. What is it? 4 or 5 straight games?
Yeah, no, I actually asked Tyron Matthew about this in the locker room, and this is what he had to say.
I know everyone's tired of hearing questions about halftime adjustments. It's more about just playing better. But what is different in the second half? Because it's just five games in a row, essentially. We're seeing kind of the same story play out.
Yeah, I think it's us just kind of being, I guess tired or, fed up of, not really executing. I think that's really, what it's all about. You make minor adjustments at halftime. You don't change your whole game plan. But every now and then, coach stands in front of you and, he's screaming and hollering and, he's just telling you to do your job, right? And I think we do a better job of, responding to that, in the second half.
So maybe have that yelling conversation
early on, for sure. See if it works.
I said that as a joke.
Right.
But then he agreed with me. And I was like, oh, maybe that is what he needs to do. Have DA show up and read him and just like rip into him before the game, even before they've done anything bad.
Right. Why is anybody even smiling right now?
Well, no, but I do think there's something to be said for that. Like, what is the energy you're coming into the game with? Alante Taylor actually was interesting in today, because he said, like, one of the issues he thinks is they're coming in too hyped. They're coming in, with their hearts in their throats, and their eye discipline gets lost, and then they're trying to make plays, and then they lose their technique, and they just lose sight of what they're supposed to be doing, and they make mistakes. And I think there's something to be said for that. But at the end of the day, it's embarrassing what they've put the performance they've put on the field over the last 5 weeks in the first half specifically. And it's remarkable that how they've been able to stop doing that in the second half. Part of it is when teams are playing with a lead, they'll get a little more conservative, because you saw like against the Jaguars, like the second that they ended up tied, they went down the field and scored immediately. So part of it is that. Part of it is like you're not taking any risks with the lead, but they're also just being more effective. They're getting into the backfield. They actually got some sacks, right? Greg Joseph did him a favor and missed a field goal. They couldn't take advantage of it, but actually, I think they might have. I can't remember. If that was, I think that was in the fourth quarter. So that was one of those possessions where they could have gone and potentially tied it, and they never did. But yeah, so the defense, you gotta figure something out. Like I don't know what you do, but those slow starts are dooming you. And people are gonna say, well, the offense didn't pull its weight, and I agree, the offense didn't pull its weight, but at the same time, you can't allow back to back 60+ yard touchdown drives and pretend to be a top 10 defense. You can't. That's crazy. You cannot allow that. And it's like, when the offense is struggling to find a rhythm, which will happen, your offense is never going to be humming. You're not putting them in situations where they have an advantage. You're putting them in situations where they feel like they have to make something happen. And then, it's not conducive to good complementary football, because as an offense, you feel like, man, we could drive the field. And they did. They moved the ball in the first possession of the game, and it bogged down, right? The second possession of the game, and it bogged down with penalties. And then it's like, well, if we give them the ball back, they're just going to go right down the field and score. And, I think that's where you see an offense play tight, and that's what you had. And Derek Carr didn't play well in this game, and the offensive line, I think, struggled. And that blitz, that kind of Brian Flores' scheme, we knew it was going to be a problem, and they did not handle it. And, it's like if your defense is out there helping your offense, that game goes differently. In this case, the defense forced the offense to carry it, and they weren't able to. And this, when you have a defensive head coach, that's where my eyes are always going to go to first. The defense, if you're going to build this team around the defense and say this is a top defense, and this defense is going to help us go the place we want to go, because they can get shit done when we need them to get shit done. Well, when they're not doing that, what is the identity of this team? It's a losing team.
I don't even know if they know their identity right now, right?
No. I mean, what? How could they? What is it?
Exactly.
Their identity is a mediocre
second half team. A second half team.
Great. Fantastic. But when you're down by 24 in the second half, I don't care how good of a second half team you are, because that's virtually impossible to come back from unless Matt Ryan is playing.
All I know is obviously the Vikings came out. You knew Hawkinson's banged up. They don't have Jefferson. Osborne's out, and you got a Joshua Dobbs, and that offense was just able to go like these big chunk yards, like 6 yards, 8 yards, 27 yards, another 9 yards here. And it was just like, damn, what's going on? And we've seen that way too often in the beginning of games, and it just doesn't make sense.
Well, the frustrating part is Paulson Adebo had a pick on that opening drive, and it just not only did he not get it, it bounced off his hands, and Jordan Addison caught it for like a 23-yard gain. And it's like, man, this is gonna be
things to come.
Kind of felt like at that point it was going to be a long day, and it was. Like, there's always one of those moments early in a game that goes like that, where you're just like, this is not our day, and I think that was it. Like, you can usually identify it. But all right, let's move on to the next thing that didn't work. And like I said, I wasn't a fan of the way that the offense operated. I wasn't a fan of the way Pete Carmichael called. Like there were some moments where I was like, okay, I can get behind it, but then there was too many. Like, what are you thinking? There was multiple instances. I think it happened twice. You ran for 7+ yards on first down and punted two plays later. Like, you did not get the first down. The first one drove me insane because it was like, you got 8 yards on first down, right? So to me, there's two options there. To me, you're either taking a shot or you're getting the first down, right? Like, I'm not getting cute. There's no reason to get cute. Either go for a big gain, go for a chunk play, or get the first down and move the chains. Instead, they run a bubble screen to Rashid Shaheed, which, fine, I don't hate the idea of bubble screens, but that's a first down play. That's not a 2nd and 2 play. That makes no sense. That's a play that you run because you're like, we can get 5-6 yards here easy. It's not going to be something that they're expecting, but like, it's also a play And we saw this I think it was against the Titans. It was like, oh, you had like 2nd and 5 and you ran a double reverse to Alvin Kamara that lost 6 yards and suddenly you turned manageable into unmanageable. And that's what happened is with Shaheed, they sniffed it out. It didn't work and they lost like 3 or 4 yards and suddenly you're on 3rd and 6. That's the only thing you can't do. Like I'm all for going deep. I'm all for taking a shot there if you want to. But it should never be an intermediate, this could lose us 5 yards type of play. Like, I hate that. And then we talked about the second half where it felt like there's like 10 minutes left in the game and they're playing as if it's a 2-minute situation. Because that's kind of how you had to play when you were down 24 points in the third quarter. I get that.
Right.
But like they couldn't handle their own success. They weren't prepared for their own success. And they just continued to call plays as if they needed 3 scores when it's like, no, you need 1. You need 1. Go get 1. They couldn't run screens. The blocking on screens was terrible. I mean, that's just something they have not been able to execute all year long, no matter who you're talking about. The blockers were there. They just couldn't find the defense. They could not find the players they were supposed to block. And like there was multiple screens. So there was the first possession where the Saints got it and they couldn't go score. It was a 3 and out. I think they ran 2 screens on that and they both failed. I think Alvin gained maybe 1 yard total. I don't know. I was not a fan of a lot of the things that they did.
No, like you said, there was a lot of head scratching stuff. And obviously later on in the game, things, they definitely got more aggressive. Carr got hurt and you were down. And we saw Jameis, his, God's plan throws plenty of times. And, it was fun for a little bit until, the end there where, the last interception was definitely terrible. But overall, I feel like we know the stats. We know we need to get Taysom Hill involved. And he was it was an afterthought in this matchup. And I know it's like, oh, you fell behind. You couldn't pound the rock with him. And then they tried to get him. I think he had 2 drop passes, actually, that from Jameis. So they did try to get him back involved with that. But just a lack of Taysom usage had me also flabbergasted, knowing how much he does mean to this offense.
Was part of that a product of getting down so quickly?
Yeah. I think when you get down like that so early in the game, it really limits a lot of things that you want to try to be able to accomplish in a game. And so, we got to be better defensively of keeping the score down, in the game, in the early part of the game, so we can have what we have as our game plan going in offensively. You kind of get out of it, probably by the early part of the second quarter, just because you're now chasing points.
See, I understand what you're saying there. I understand what DA is saying. It's like you're chasing points. But at the same time, bullshit. No, that can't be the excuse when that has been effectively the best part of your offense to this point in the season. That is not a situational part of your offense, right? Like I understand you can't just run the ball and get 3 yards in a cloud of dust and just stack first downs when you're essentially behind by 4 scores. 3 scores, 8 points a pop, maybe, but that's very difficult to pull off. But that's not like you're talking. You can get chunk plays with the Taysom Hill offense. You didn't even give it a chance. You didn't even try it, and that's not in the second quarter when you just need to extend a drive after your defense has been on the field for like the entire first half because you can't get a first down. You're telling me that's why you're not running Taysom? No, that's not an excuse. That's not the answer. Like that can't be it. Even in the fourth quarter, when you have 10 minutes to go and all you need is a drive, you just need to get downfield and score. That does not make sense. That cannot be the answer. The answer is we fucked up. Like the answer is we didn't do the right thing, not we got out of our game plan because we were behind, right? We didn't call the right plays. That's what happened. And like they did try to get Taysom on the first drive of the second half. And, one of the funny things in the snap counts that you saw was like Trevor Penning had technically zero. He had fewer snaps on offense than he had penalties on offense because he had one snap and it was a false start, which in his defense, the entire left side of the line false started. And for some reason, he's the one who got the call. I've always wondered how they decide in that situation because you're only calling it on one guy and he was like in the middle.
Pile it on him.
Maybe he moved first, but that's very funny to me that Trevor Penning, he had 0 offensive snaps, 1 penalty on offense. And that was a play where he was 4th and short. You were going for it in your own territory. You were going to run Taysom. Jamal Williams got stacked up on 3rd down, and you were going to be like, we're doing it. We're going. And you never got the chance because of the penalty. But no, like you can talk about the run game and you can say, like, there are things you do with Taysom that are not the run game. Like, no, you can't just you can't say just Taysom as a pass catcher in our offense, right? Because you're supposed to have Juwan Johnson. Where the hell's Juwan Johnson? There's another guy that it's like he was on the field for 51 snaps in that game. You could have fooled. You could have told me he was on the field for 5, and I would have believed you because he was a non-factor. He had 3 targets, 1 catch, 2 yards. That can't be the case. What is? It's just so frustrating. It's so frustrating. And like. I don't know.
No, a lot of it is it's a lot of nonsensical stuff, man, and it's just like it is frustrating as heck. But I don't know anymore. I'm gonna have to pile on with the masses and say it does come down to Pete and it comes down to DA. Obviously, both of them. It is coaching.
Well, and it's like the reason this game sucks so bad is because. It's like in previous games, it's like, okay, well, the offense didn't play well, but the defense forced 5 turnovers, and they basically won that game for you. Like in Indy, the defense didn't play particularly well, but the offense put up 38 points. And so you could say, okay, it's like we're still waiting for that complete game. Well, in this one, you got a complete game, but it was completely bad. It was bad on both sides. It was not, in the second half, yeah, sure, you played better, but the first half, you got housed in every way.
Everybody was like, screw it, I'm not doing anything.
The defense looked lifeless. They really did. And they were, it's got to be frustrating. I understand why. Like when you just cannot get a stop, when you can't get off the field. That's why that last possession where the Saints punted, I was like, oh my God, they gave it back to him. It didn't matter how much time they gave it back to him, but they were going to score a touchdown because the defense at that point was dead. So yeah, that's another one that didn't work. Moving on. One other thing that did not work in this game, and it was the penalties. I mean,
they're back.
Like I said, hosed. You didn't get hosed. There were penalties. You got just shellacked in every way possible, and that included. I want to say there was. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 penalties. 3 of them were declined. Is that right? I think so. Either way, in that range. I'll tell you the exact number of penalties in yardage. So in the end, you're looking at 9 penalties for 74 yards. But okay, so you had 12 penalties called. 3 of them were declined. Rashid, as much as I love Rashid is one of my favorite players on this team. I love watching him play. You got to know where the fucking line of scrimmage is. You got to know. You can't line up even with the ball. What are you doing? And if it was the first time, that'd be one thing. Right. He has done that multiple times this year where it's like, how many you could go an entire season without seeing a false start on a wide receiver. I feel like he's got like 5. And it's like that can't happen. It can't happen. God.
No, mind-numbing shit that happens, right?
We've seen offensive offsides penalties in the last 2 games. And I don't know if, you could go an entire season without seeing an offensive offside. Now, the one against Eric McCoy was BS. Like, they said he moved the ball forward. It's like, it doesn't matter. Everyone's lined up where they're lined up. Where the ball is technically sitting doesn't actually, every center, anyway. But, man. So, yeah, I'll go through the list. I'll read them all just to drive home how crazy this is. So, Foster Moreau, offensive holding, 10 yards. Carl Granderson, offside, 5 yards. Marcus May, and that one I think might have actually been declined. because yes, that was the one where he jumped and then Josh Dobbs went deep and Paulson Debo actually intercepted it, but it didn't count. And Paulson decided to burn like 37 seconds off the clock by jogging around for no reason. Marcus May, illegal contact, that was declined. Lonnie Johnson Jr., illegal contact, that was declined. Pete Werner, illegal contact, that was not declined. That actually wiped away a sack that the Saints got, and it was a pretty soft call. But either way, you can't. I mean, you can't touch him down the field, like that. Rashid Shaheed, false start, 5 yards. Trevor Penning, false start, 5 yards. 5 yards. Zach Wood holding on a punt for the second week in a row, 10 yards. I'm sorry, not the second week in a row, because they only had one last week, but he has gotten a holding on a punt earlier this season. Carl Granderson roughing the passer, 15 yards. Tyrann Mathieu face mask, 15 yards. Rashid Shaheed offside, 5 yards. Andres Pete offensive holding, which was on the second Jameis interception, which was obviously declined. So yeah, those are a lot of penalties. So Rashid had a false start and an offensive offside penalty. And like you're a wide receiver. Like you don't need to go. It's
right. It's like it don't knock. It doesn't make sense.
Right. It's very frustrating. And like I didn't mention Derek Carr in here. Derek Carr sucked. Like it was one of his worst games. Like he wasn't good. He wasn't. I mean, the annoying thing is his best throw of the game was the one where he got knocked unconscious. Because that throw to Chris where he stepped up in the pocket and he rifled it in. It was a great throw. It started that drive that ended with the touchdown to Chris. Like it got Chris going in the game. I think it might have been his first catch. But I mean,
that was another thing. Took him way too long to get involved, obviously.
Yeah, he was holding the ball too long. I think he got in his own head about the blitzes and he was trying to, I don't know. Like it's tough. And that's why like, just run the ball, guys, run the freaking ball. Like get Taysom in there. Like that's a point in the game where you should have felt like we're going to use Taysom to help alleviate some of the pressure on Derek.
Yes, please.
Never did it. It's like I don't want Taysom the pass catcher. Like that's good when it's playing off of Taysom doing everything else. It can't be like he works as a pass catcher because he is in the personnel grouping and they're like he's probably going to run it. Oh no, he didn't run it. You know what we haven't seen this year really at all? Maybe once. Is Taysom Hill running a play with Derek split out to the side. And people are like, well, why would that be beneficial? And because when you do that, because of the whole pass catcher thing, like when you bring Taysom in and you have Derek Carr on the field, they're not going to give you that crazy big bodied personnel because they know you're going to run. They have to assume, okay, maybe he's going to split out. Right. And so if you're not doing that, every time Taysom comes on the field as I don't know, it's just not a good setup. And like there's nothing stopping you from having Taysom in the personnel and having him line up under center and putting Derek off to the side where he's a non-factor, but he at least forces them to play honestly in the defense. And you just haven't done that. So that's another thing. But yeah, Derek was not good in this game. Juwan Johnson was the other one. And then the other thing we talked about was turf fields. That's all the stuff that I mentioned. Anything else that you want to complain about, you want to get in on before we move on?
I'm just still really bummed out about how we haven't had that Jamal Williams game yet where he's broken out. Really had a lot of high expectations for him coming into this season. And I think we've mentioned it tons of times. It's a dude that's had 17 touchdowns last year. And I just feel like he's being underutilized too.
Well, he hasn't been good. He hasn't been good enough.
Right.
And part of that's on the offensive line, right? Like, that the one thing that you can go look at Detroit and say for sure is they have one of the best offensive lines in football. And when you're a power back, that helps you. And it just hasn't been the case. I mean, that 4th and 1 that they got called for the penalty on, the reason they ended up there was because Jamal couldn't pick up the first down on 3rd and 1. It's like, that's why you're here, dude. It's why you're here. But again, it's like the offensive line isn't blocking. You can only do so much. But yeah, this is a lot that we can sit here and complain about.
There were times though in the run game was kind of clicking early on, and I was shocked they were ripping up some yardage, and then they just for whatever reason you want to talk about, they got away from it.
But like I said, they had at least twice in this game they ran for 7 or more yards on first down and didn't get a first down on that position. Why not run it again?
Right.
Why not?
That's inexcusable.
What's stopping you?
More stuff you're hitting your head going, why?
What's stopping you from running the ball until they tackle you? Tell me. What's stopping you from doing that other than yourself? Anyway, it's a whole thing. But
maybe Pete Carmichael's got too much Sean Paytonitis.
I don't know, but either way, that's going to wrap up that segment. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about some of the things that did work. There's not a lot of them, so it's going to be a pretty quick segment. Then we're going to come back and hit a mailbag for a kind of bonus episode for this week. This is Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Gell. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. Hit us up on YouTube, WWL Sports. Obviously, if you're watching this currently, you are already doing that, so I appreciate all of you. If you also listen to podcasts, check us out wherever you get your podcast. Maybe leave us a rating, leave us a review, hit the subscribe button. Really would appreciate it. Let me know what you think, what you want to see more of in the show. Give us ideas for segments. We're going to need them this week. This week's going to be weird. We don't have a game to talk about, so we're just going to have to come up with ideas. So if there's anything you want to hear about, let us know, and we'll find a way to talk about it either this next episode or Monday. Because again, the Monday is going to be the real bottom of the barrel one. And we'll come back to it. But all right, this is Inside Black and Gold. Stick around. All right, and we're back on Inside Black and Gold. Sorry for that little bit of an extended break, but if I didn't get a head start on some of the comments, then the break before the mailbag would be 45 minutes long. So count your blessings, but I appreciate everyone who stuck through. We still have, we're nearly 100 people in here watching, and I do appreciate it. As always, if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and do that. Ring the bell, hit us up on wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Overcast, Deezer. I don't know.
I feel like you're making up names because I've never heard of Deezer in my life.
There's a lot of weird podcast names, man. But all right, let's do this. This is going to be the slightly more upbeat segment, and because of that, it's going to be real short because there's not a ton to be upbeat about. But one thing that we can say on the podcast, kind of breaking news, if you will. I think Mike Garofalo, I don't know how to say his name, from NFL Network reported that Jason Pierre-Paul has worked out with the Saints. Doesn't mean they're going to sign him, but I do think that they will. I would be surprised if they don't, because I think he just makes a lot of sense. It depends on, if he has other offers probably, and if he's healthy enough to sign, that's always the wild card of, okay, it's like this guy says he's back, but is he? And then your team doctors look at him and it's like he's crumbling into dust, and so that's obviously a wild card. But I think if there's mutual interest, I think you're going to have a JPP on this defense. And I think they should. I think that he's a guy who can help, especially if Isaiah Foskey missed time. So that'll be interesting. And I would expect that to be a practice squad signing at least at first, if it happens. But that's
glad to
something.
see. I'm glad they're at least, you see they're looking, because they need some help on the D line.
Yeah,
sure.
we talked about it. We talked about it in the last episode. Like,
Yeah.
I think JPP would fit. It's funny because he played a lot of outside linebacker in the last several years with Tampa, and I can't remember where he went after that. Baltimore, I think it was Baltimore.
That
But
seems right. Yeah.
with the Giants, his best seasons came with the Giants as a 4-3 defensive end, so he can do it. And he can also drop into coverage. He can do a little bit more. He can be, that kind of hybrid defensive end. So I think that would be a good addition for this team. So that fits right into the upbeat part of the program, which I'm sure we're going to lose a lot of our of the people in here because they want us to complain, and we'll get back to complaining once we hit the mailbag. But
yeah, don't worry about that for sure, right?
But yeah, so one, stock up is pretty much on offense and pretty much all from the second half. So Chris Olave, you needed him to step up in that moment, and he did, right? I think he finished with 6 catches for 94 yards. All of it was in the second half. I don't know why he was unable to be found. He was in witness protection in that first half. But like I said, the last throw from Derek Carr in the game before, he got hit with a sledgehammer was to Chris Olave. It was a long gain over the middle. I think it was like second and long, like 2nd and 20 or something like that. He picked up 19 yards, and they ended up converting, going downfield. That touchdown catch, put it to mute, was gorgeous.
Yeah.
Would I love to see him not disappear in games? Yes. But that's the Chris Olave you need to get back to. And while it wasn't the huge supernova game that you would want to see, and you'd want to see him put 2 halves together and really be dominant, maybe 130, 140 yards, that type of game, I think you didn't see those kind of dumb mistakes. He felt like he wasn't pressing in that game the way that we saw in Indy, right? I think he's kind of getting back to that. The unfortunate thing, I'm starting to wonder if there is it's like whatever deal Ohio State has made with the Devils for their wide receivers to be the best receivers on the planet. You're only allowed to have one of them successful at any given time. Because when Mike Thomas is on the field, it just doesn't feel like you get that Ohio State buff that you get when only Chris Olave is on the field. But no, I mean, that's a good thing for the Saints that he kind of made his presence known, and hopefully that can become more consistent as the season goes on.
Yeah, I gave him my player of the game just because of that amazing grab. It was
really good.
Yeah, and that's obviously, like you said, this is what you expect to see. You want to see more of out of Chris Olave. Something we did talk about in training camp, that increased ability in those contested catch situations. And yeah, I could watch that one on a loop, and I probably will on the bye week to make my tears lessen.
It was good. It was a good one. And like I said, I think he was also dealing with an injury in that game. Like you could see him kind of hobbled a little bit, but I think you just saw him be more of a leadership style player in that game, right? Like you didn't see his body language get bad. You didn't see the energy level. Like he didn't, you could say he quit on one route, which was the thrown punt effectively.
Yeah.
But even then, it was like that he's not a read on that play. He's not a check on that play, and that ball should have never been. It's like throw that out of bounds.
Wasn't there also one Carr through that he kind of underran?
It's possible. I can't remember.
Maybe
every
it's
target.
a different receiver I'm thinking about. I'm just blaming Olave.
He had 9 targets, so he caught 6 of them. So one of them was that interception. I couldn't tell you the other 2.
Okay.
But I was encouraged by Chris. Let's put it that way. Was it perfect? No, but I was encouraged. The next stock up that I have, A.T. Perry. He's a guy that he has all the talent in the world, and the consistency is where you lose me a little bit. But he's he's a huge target over the middle of the field. He can run, he can leap, he can catch. He's very athletic. That the first catch of the game, I think, was a better catch. I love the route he ran. I love that's the part of the field the Saints have really struggled to take advantage of, is kind of that intermediate middle. And, if he's a guy that can help in that regard, then, obviously you don't want to be without Mike for an extended period of time, but maybe that allows for excuse me. Maybe that allows for him to get a bit more involved and you maybe see if you got something out of that guy. But I think we talked about this in the first segment. That throw by Jameis was just absolutely unhinged. That decision, it was a great throw, but I still can't believe he threw it. AT, to his credit, went up and got it. He told us that a few of the receivers and the tight ends and Jameis have been getting together to like run routes and work on stuff on Tuesdays, which, the reaction was, where's Derek Carr? But that's their off day. I think that's kind of like scout teamwork. It's not because like you're saying some of the tight ends, you're probably talking about the Tommy Hudsons of the tight end room, and it's like, yeah, like that's not Chris Olave, Derek Carr there. That's, the backups kind of working and getting extra work in. And that's good. That's what you want to see for those fringe roster guys so that when they get on the field, they're ready. And it looked like he was ready. So I thought that was a good debut for him, or not debut, but that was a good first kind of foray into production for him.
Yeah, and obviously when he was brought in, everyone kind of imagined a break in case of glass of emergency with Mike Thomas kind of situation. And, because he is that body type, able to make the, contested catch guy of A.T. Perry. He was looked at that as that being his biggest, I think, asset to the Saints when they brought him in. And with Mike going down, obviously you need that help. And yeah, maybe this is, hey, Rook, you got an extra opportunity now. Who knows how long Mike might be out now. But if he ends up being more involved in this offense, yeah, you want to see, obviously, that development. And, I mean, there wasn't any of those huge flashes, I would say, though, like during training camp that made you turn your head kind of with Perry. But I feel like, obviously, was able to make those adjustments in the game this past, his first real major outing, getting his first catch, getting his first touchdown, and definitely, obviously, you want to see him build off of that.
Yeah, no, I mean, he had a really slow start to camp. There's no sugarcoating it, and his hands were the biggest concern, in my opinion. Like, he was dropping everything. And I do have, like, this game wasn't perfect for him. He's still a rookie. He's a 6th round pick. Like, he is a developmental player. Don't get it confused. But, like, there was more good than bad. The one that I'll criticize is the late in the game, over the middle of the field, he kind of leapt for a ball he didn't have to leap for. And because he did that and he got outside of his frame, it gave the defender more of a target to kind of chop, and he knocked the ball out. And it's like, if you just kind of keep your feet, make a hands catch, get down, kind of defend yourself a little bit more, that's a big gain. And because of the way he went for it, I made it a lot easier for the defender to make a play. It's not an easy catch. It's one that, as a rookie, I think that you're going to watch back on film and you're going to be like, okay, what's the proper technique to go out and make this catch and protect myself? Yeah. And he didn't do it, but like, that's, there are levels, and you'll see him go. Like we saw him in the preseason catching a touchdown from Jameis. Like they have continuity and comfort together. So I think that made sense that
if Jameis wants to throw it up, I'll go get it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you're going to throw it up to anybody, that's not a bad decision. And like, as much as I'll make fun of that decision to throw it, he did put it in a spot where only AT could go get it. And that's what made that throw a great throw. You're still not going to find a quarterback coach in the world that's going to co-sign that decision. But like at that point, you just needed to make a play, and he made a play. It was 3rd down. It's not like it was right. 2nd down. Like that's one of my, and let's move on. So my next stack-up player, Jameis. I thought Jameis played well. I thought he did what you need a backup quarterback to do, which is go in there and give you a chance. He got in the game with a 24-point deficit, and they almost got it done. And the biggest critique that I have for Jameis is like, you don't have to get everything on every play. Like sometimes you just got to live to play another down. And that thrown punt, because it was basically a thrown punt to Chris Olave. And it's like, maybe Chris can go up and make a play on it. But like, there was no reason. He was covered. Like there was no reason to feel like he was in an advantage. And it's like, that's 3rd down. You're in 4 down territory. All you like it. There's no you got pressure coming down your face. You can't take a grounding penalty, but you can still throw it out of bounds. Like you could still throw it in the area that you're throwing and just get it so that it's out of bounds near where Chris is, and you can probably get away with that. I fault the play call more than Jameis in that I want to run Taysom there. That's an example of a situation. You got plenty of time. Just get, you have 2 downs. Run it. Get a 1st down. Continue. Keep the pressure on. And instead you turned it over. The next one, it kind of felt like he was trying to get everything. It was 1st down. That's what drives, like, not even the decision to throw it, but it's like you made a 4th down throw on 1st down. Like, you don't have to make that throw on 1st down. You got plenty of chances. You're going on 4 downs. You get an extra down to work with check it down. You got time. It's like the 2-minute warning. You got plenty of time. And instead, you're trying to get it all on one play. And that's where I'm critical. But generally speaking, I thought he moved the ball well. He runs the offense well. Like, that's all you can hope. Like, look at what the Giants are dealing with Danny DeVito at quarterback. Like, when you have to go to your backup, all bets are off. Like, the Jets are trying to win games with Zach Wilson. Like, the Saints are in a good situation with Jameis as their backup. And I think that he showed you why. If you had given him a less impossible situation, maybe he could have brought you all the way back. But you just asked a little bit too much. Still, I think that there's a lot of reasons to like his performance.
Yeah, I'll give you that he was at least a spark for this offense that needed something going, and didn't all of a sudden seem like the panic button was pressed, even though it seemed like the end of the world was going on with now Carr getting hurt, you being down so big in the game. But I still got to, to me, I definitely wanted more Taysom at quarterback too. I thought we would see, and that just didn't happen. Yeah,
he just didn't use him. And it's like, we're chasing points. I don't care. That's your offense. That's part of your offense. That's not a situational part of your offense. So 3 other things that I'll mention kind of quickly as honorable mentions, nothing to harp on, but 2-point conversions. Saints are 3 for 3 this year on 2-point conversions. And this is
I'll take the positive, right?
They got away with, I think, half the offensive line false started on one of them. They just didn't call it.
Yes.
But like, I'll take it, because I want to be a good 2-point conversion team. That is a good quality to have. And because the Saints were a really bad 2-point conversion team for a long time. Like, I think they went like through the stretch of like 2 seasons without converting one. And so they're 3 for 3. The other one came against the Jags. It was a throw to Alvin. So Alvin has gotten all 3 of them.
The 2-point specialist.
Yeah, he caught one against, he'll take, fantasy owners will take it, right? Because that's 2 points every time. He caught one against the Jags. These 2, he ran for it. So that's a good thing, right? If you're looking for positives, being good on 2-point conversions is a good thing to be as an offense.
Yeah, like just when it was happening, obviously too, the first one you get excited over, and then when they're able to do it again, it was like, holy shit, I'm feeling it. They're gonna do it, right? They're gonna do it.
Right, because like I said, like one of the, I don't know if I've ever seen a team come all the way back from 24 down in 3 scores, because usually you don't get to that third one feeling like, you don't get to a situation where you're 2 for 2 and you just need a third, right? Usually it's like you fail on the first or the second. So it's like, okay, we've gone from a 3-score game to a 3-score game, right? But you kept it a 3-score game all the way through, and that's what made that that was you made that a game. You just couldn't finish it off. Either, and the 2-point conversions were the reason that you were still able to do that. Another guy didn't get much opportunity in this game, but Blake Grupe really needed a game that he just went out there and didn't fuck up, didn't screw anything up, didn't miss any kicks, and he only got 1 attempt. I wouldn't exactly qualify it as splitting the uprights, but he made it. 47 yards. The 40 to 49 has been the bugaboo for him. He made it. Like, I think if he had missed that kick in going in, this would be a long bye week for the young guy there. And so just in the sense of like confidence, made a kick, you didn't have a chance at a PAT to even try, but a 1 for 1 is 1 for 1. All you can do is go out there and kick them when they ask you to kick them. And he made his only opportunity, and he needed that. It would have been nice to see him get some more chances, but he just needed a game where something didn't go wrong so that he can go into the next game and feel like he's building momentum. So I thought that was good.
Yeah, to me, like you hear 48 yards and it's kind of like, you get a little uncomfortable. Like it's no gimme. You should make it.
Should be a gimme.
Right. But it never I don't know, 48, you're still like, there could be. So yeah, good for him. I know that's been an area that's been an issue, obviously. And man, oh man, he needed definitely, like you said, a positive going into the bye week to feel good about himself. And yeah, I don't think the Saints will be bringing in kickers to work out, like DA mentioned, like beforehand, since we had a clean game from him. We'll just ride out Grupe the rest of the way.
Yeah. I mean, like I think right. It's they were never going to bring in kickers anyway. So it's just nice to see. Like I want to see him continue to build confidence, and hopefully he can get back to that 11 for 12 guy that we saw at the beginning of the year.
Right. They're like, hey, don't make us look like idiots here. Please help us out.
Seriously. Yeah, make at least one of our decisions seem right. Right? All right. The other one other is Lynn Bowden caught his first catch as a Saint. Wasn't perfect. He double caught it. He almost dropped it. But give him credit. He does all the dirty work, so it's nice to see him get rewarded. Lou Hedley punted 6 times, and like we talked about this in the last episode, he's still that first punt. That first punt, it's always bad. I don't know what it is, but so that first punt, I think it was from the 49. 40. It was from the 47, and he kicked it into the end zone. It's one of the first. He hasn't had many touchbacks this season, but that was one of them. So that was a 27-yard net punt. But I'll give him credit though, because he bounced back. His next 2 punts: 48-yard net punt, 48-yard net punt, 44-yard net punt. He had a 37-yarder that I think got returned 9 yards. So like it was a 46-yard kick that got returned, which is rare. You don't see that. And then his next one was a 46-yard kick that got returned 3 yards. So it was a 43-yard net. Even with that 27-yard net kick to start the day, he had his net yardage was 41.1, which is right. I think where the Saints would like him to be in terms of net punting yardage. So again, not perfect, but another solid day for him. And that's kind of what you want to see going forward, is just be consistent. Don't, if you, and it's like, if you're going to mess up, I'd much prefer you mess up on the going in punt where you send it in the end zone than the ones where you're kicking from your own 19 and you only get it 28 yards, right? Like those were the 48-yard net kicks. And that's how you flip a field, right? Like 60-yard kicks would be great, but if you can get 48 yards out of a punt, so you're kicking from your own 20 and that gets you to what? The 22? That's a win.
Yeah, we don't care about first halves anyway. So you can be shitty early on.
Yeah, and you asked them to punt a lot. 6 punts in a game is a lot.
I'm putting you in the column up for not putting any defenders on your list, so I appreciate that.
Oh yeah, there's nothing good to talk about.
There was no way you were going to sell me on anyone on defense this game.
No, I mean, who would it be? Like, I genuinely tried. I was like trying to think of like, if I was going to say something nice about somebody, who would I say something nice about? I just can't think of anybody. Even in the second half, like I don't think anyone made any big plays. I think Carl got in the backfield and got Josh to the ground at least once. Paulson didn't have a terrible day. Marshon, I don't think, had a terrible day. Like again, it was like there was TJ Hawkinson who was maybe at a certain point you consider putting Marshon on TJ, but we know that Marshon doesn't go into the slot, and so that would just make things complicated. But yeah, there was nobody. There was no one.
No, and that's why I said I'm giving you the gold star too for not even trying to push any of that nonsense.
Thanks. I appreciate that. No agendas. My only agenda is, trying to get 2 podcasts done in one day. That's my agenda. I can enjoy the bye. It's a bye week for me too.
We'll do our whole breaking down the NFC South, the toughest division in the NFL.
The toughest division to watch in the NFL.
That's what I meant.
Oh man. All right. So that's going to wrap it up for us on this episode of Inside Black and Gold. If you're watching on YouTube, stick around. We're going to do a mailbag but that's going to be a separate episode of the podcast. So if it's confusing, it'd probably be confusing, but we're going to come back and we're going to do a full lead in for a new episode that's going to post on Wednesday, probably. But it's going to be for the YouTube audience, it's going to be the exact same. But yeah, so thanks everyone for watching, listening, whatever. Saints are bad, but they're not the worst.
First place.
First place, baby. This is a first place podcast. And we got a week off. Then you're going to come back and you're going to have the battle for whoever gets their coach fired, right? That's kind of what it feels like. It's like whoever wins this game, the coach gets fired. Maybe not this game, but like both. Whichever team gets swept, the coach gets fired, right? 1-1, and everyone just stays in misery. But yeah, we're gonna see it. But thanks everyone for listening. This is Inside Black and Gold. Who dat? Go Saints.
Top of the South.
Top of the South. Woo! Actually, hold on. Let me go back to break so I can finish off these.
Okay.
Hey, y'all, who dat? Welcome in. This is a special edition of Inside Black and Gold. There was just so much going on that we wanted to do a secondary mailbag so that we could get to a lot of viewer questions. Didn't want to cram it into the last episode. So this is going to be probably a 2-segment. I'm going to try to shoot for maybe a half-hour episode here. But whoever's listening on the podcast feed will already know how long it is. So I don't know why I'm explaining this to you. But we're going to dive into the mailbag and get to as many questions as we can. There's a lot in there. So I'm going to try to get to all of those first. But if you drop any questions in the feed, since after we get going here, we'll try to do as many as we can. But I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. If you're watching on YouTube, it's at WWL Sports. Hit the bell, ring the bell, and subscribe to that channel. And make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And hit us up on Twitter at Jeff_Nowak, at Steve Geller WWL. If you have any questions that we don't get to here, that'd be a good place to ask them. So without further ado, I think this is a good question. Just Robin Strugari says, why don't we blitz more? Seemed to work well in the second half, and I think our secondary is talented enough to cover. We need to get to the QB more. I actually don't think the blitz has worked. I don't think the Saints don't blitz a lot. They're not a blitz scheme, right? And so they're very unimaginative blitzes because you just don't do a lot of them. And so you're talking about, I want to bring pressure from the linebacker level. I don't want to see defensive backs blitzing, but I do want to see spies. I want to see spies on the quarterback more often. You did that with Pete Werner in this game, but I'd like to see it. I'd like to see, maybe go into dime packages a little bit more. If they're not running the ball, at least not traditionally running the ball, and you can just get into dime. Jordan Howden didn't have a snap in this game. I thought that was strange. I think there's an option for you to get into dime and have a defensive back spying the quarterback. Maybe do something like that. I don't think blitzing is the answer because I think that just it's one of your issues is you're getting everything's going haywire and you're allowing the quarterback to kind of freewheel and break contain and do whatever. You want to pin him. You want to keep him in the pocket. You want to force him to beat you from the pocket. And one thing blitzing does is it kind of explodes everything, and it makes it just everything gets a little hectic. And against certain quarterbacks, like a Jared Goff, I think you want to be able to do that. Against a Derek Carr, you want to be able to do that, and that kind of disrupts the timing and everything. Against a Josh Dobbs, if you don't get him down, then you're screwed, right? Then you're under leveraged in the secondary. And so I think, to me, it's not about blitzing. It's about disguising pressure and bringing it from the linebacker level so that you can have someone else spy the quarterback. But I agree. I think that you do need to get a little bit more creative with how you're pressuring the quarterback.
Yeah, that's my biggest thing, too. It's like, I don't know whatever is needed at this point, but the lack of pressure has definitely been an issue. And then it seems like when we're able to get to these guys, whoever it is, has just been taken off and running down the green pasture. And the frustrating one, I think, especially, was like a Trevor Lawrence. I didn't expect him to be as mobile as he was, honestly.
Yeah, and I'll say, in most instances, when you're talking about a blitz-heavy team, they're not blitzing because they want to. They're blitzing because they have to. And you might say, well, the Saints have to. The Saints have to be better. But I don't know. I don't think this defense. I don't think the answer for this defense is blitz is a heavier blitz scheme. And they're not I think they're 23rd in the NFL in blitz rate, which is obviously not high, but it's also not last in the NFL. There's teams that blitz less than they do. So I don't I think generating pressure and containing quarterbacks is a question, but I'm just not I don't think more defensive back blitzes is the answer. I wouldn't mind seeing more 5-man pressures again from the interior, like A-gap pressure, but you got to get there. And there was a couple instances where they sent, I know that I saw at least one where they sent Lonnie Johnson on a blitz and he just got picked up. That's the worst, is when you blitz and they pick it up, because then you're screwed. Then you're just hopefully the quarterback screws up because someone's open. And that's why it's frustrating for the Saints, is they never pick it up. And when
a little curious this year because they were better last season, obviously. And you can't tell me because Caden Ellis has gone, all of a sudden they're not as good as, sending guys.
Well, that is a factor, right? I think one thing that happened last year is you didn't have Marshon for 10 games. So you weren't as comfortable just having your defensive backs be out there on an island So you did send more pressure, especially from the linebacker level. Now you don't have that, like Zach Bond can be that guy maybe. Like I think you find a way to ramp up the pressure that way, but I do think losing Caden Ellis in that regard is a factor. And people will say, well, they should have paid him. You were never going to pay him what the Falcons paid him. I don't care if you're paying Derek Carr. I don't care if you're paying Jameis Winston. They were never going to invest $28 million, like $7 million a year in a Sam linebacker, right? In their third linebacker. Now, if DeMario had retired, then all in, right? But you can only invest so much in backups.
No, and I think that was a pretty, actually, I won't say big, but a key piece to Ryan Nielsen going over to Atlanta too. He wanted to bring probably, Ellis with him, along with even an Onyemata.
Yeah, no one else was paying Caden Ellis that much. Not even the Saints. Like, it's funny because we can say, well, the reason Caden got paid was because he kind of exploded and like had that opportunity. But that was only helpful for Ryan. Ryan was going to want to take him either way, But that kind of helped him probably sell the idea to Terry, who also knew Caden, right? So anyway, that's something. We got a positive comment from Natch. The Saints will be okay. Just make the playoffs, get in the dance. And I do wonder, and like I think we talked about this last week. At a certain point, you just have to be a fan and hope for the best, right? Like I get it, it's frustrating, but don't. I think that there's a middle ground where you can be frustrated and say like this isn't going well and we need to do things differently and maybe and like critical, but it should still come from a place of like I want the team to be good and I'm not going to be upset if they go out and win games. And that's where I went on a rant about like the kind of the toxic fanhood thing, and like that's the difference to me. If your criticism is coming from a place of I want this team to be better, then that's one thing. If your criticism is coming from a place of I want this team to be so bad that everyone gets fired. I don't know. That's kind of
And we could draft Caleb.
Yeah, I don't know. There's when I talk about the fanhood that bothers me, it's like it feels like there are people. If the Saints made it to like the NFC Championship this year, if they got on a run and they just got hot, like one of those Giants teams and just made a run, that people would be mad about. And like at a certain point, you just got to be a fan, right?
I would hope folks aren't that caught up in wanting Dennis Allen fired that they're pissed off if they make the playoffs.
I think,
and then have a good run too.
I think there would be because they know that it would mean that Dennis is coming back. But hate to break it to you, I'm pretty sure like Dennis is going to come back. And so yeah, and I get it. Like it's frustrating. But like at a certain I do wonder. I am curious. So if you end up at the point where you're 9-8 and in the postseason, it's like you should still be excited for a home playoff game. That's all I'm gonna say. It's like don't home playoff games don't happen that often, right? Like you just I get it. The Breeze Payton era probably left people with this idea of what rooting for an NFL team is supposed to be like. Go ask some of your older friends. Go ask like your grandfather what it was like rooting for the Saints in like the 80s. Right? Like there's a lot of teams that a home playoff game would be like the mecca of what they could hope for. And so don't waste that opportunity to enjoy your team winning a division is all I'm going to say. Like, because there is a point where you just got to just take the ride,
Can I just pay for a ticket to the second half of the game?
Yeah. Just don't watch the first half. But again, and I will say, like, there's this idea that no team in the Saints position right now has ever gone to the playoffs and had success. And I need you to understand that is objectively false, right? Like teams can get hot in the second half of a season, and it's really all it is. It's like you figure some things out and you get going, and you might say this team doesn't have a chance to be that. I'll tell you guys, Dennis Allen is not that different from Tom Coughlin. Tom Coughlin is this same kind of like, meh, like no one really liked him, But like it just worked, and you got it going, and they won 2 Super Bowls with that dude. And the funniest Tom Coughlin story that he and Michael Strahan used to get into it, and one of the things that Michael Strahan hated about Tom was he had set all of the, and this is just an old school head coach thing. Like, I'm not saying DA does this, but he had set all of the clocks in the building ahead 10 minutes. And so if you were on time for a meeting, you were late. Like if the meeting started at 8 and you got there at 7:59 on your watch, you were 9 minutes late. And Michael Strahan was a superstar defensive end, right? Like I think he still has the sack record. I don't think TJ got it. I think it was close, but I could be wrong. Either way, this was a guy who literally was dominant. Like he was one of the best. He's a Hall of Famer, and he was like, "What the hell, man?" Like I showed up. It's like the meeting. If you want the meeting to start at 7:50, then start the meeting at 7:50. Don't tell me it's 8:00 and get mad at me for showing up anyway. So I mean, like there's a lot of different ways to do this. But if you're telling me that you're going to look back at those Giants teams that won Super Bowls and that they were in better situations than the Saints are right now, I'm going to tell you that they were not. No one believed in Eli Manning before that first Super Bowl, and no one really believed in him before that second one either. But because he had won one already, he had job security, and they were never going to move on from him until Ben McAdoo showed up, and they were like, "Hey, maybe Geno's the guy," and maybe he would have been if they give him a chance. So it's not as simple as saying this team doesn't have a chance. It's can they fix their issues, get their shit figured out, and get hot at the right time? And any team is capable of doing that. Now, do I feel like that's where the Saints season is headed? Probably not. I don't see the signs. But again, like this is kind of that fulcrum right here, is that bye week, right? Like you got through the first half of the season, which is the pre-bye part of the season. Now you're on the stretch run, and you have a lot of winnable games, and you can get hot, right? Like you can win some games. Like I said, I think they actually match up pretty well against the Lions. Will they win? I don't know, but they're not going to have the same types of struggles that they have had against Josh Dobbs, against not Kyler Murray. Who did they face?
Bagent.
Like they're not going to have those types of mobile quarterback problems. So, and a win in that game, suddenly everyone's looking like, "Oh my God, maybe they're for real." And then everyone's going to be like, "Oh, they just didn't face a guy who could move."
Look what we're saying, though. Problems with Bagent and Dobbs. Whoopity doo-dah.
Well, they also got 5 turnovers in that game. So
anyway. The sad thing, though, too, is obviously the team hasn't beaten a squad with the winning record yet.
No, yeah, that's a bad stat. That is a brutal stat when you really look at it. That said, the Colts are, like you could say, like, oh, is it a winning record at the time, or is it a winning record at the end of the season, right? Well, when do you judge that? Because like
you play them.
I'm pretty sure the Colts are going to end up with a winning record by the end of the season. Colts are a solid football team. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of strange, but like the Bucs, didn't the Bucs have a winning record? I guess they lost to the Bucs, right? But like, it's a whole thing, but no, the Saints have not beaten good teams, and they have lost to a couple bad teams, but I don't think the Vikings are a bad team. I think the Vikings are a sneaky good football team. And that's not just because the Saints lost to them. It's just because like they've done it 2 weeks in a row. They've done it 5 weeks in a row. Like they've won 5 games in a row without Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, they have a winning record, so we can't beat them.
Well, I mean, but that doesn't happen by accident. Like I think that's you got to give credit to Kevin O'Connell. You got to give credit to that.
Shout out to him for sure.
Like like I think that's a good football team. And the Saints obviously would like to consider themselves a good football team, but I think you saw the difference in that game. Jerry G says 5-2. We should be 8-2. Not thrilled at being in first place with a 5-5 record, but I will take it. I like that last sentence because that's
what
you should
do, right?
Like, no one's going to apologize for winning the division, right? But at the same time, yeah, like that Packers game, man, that one really, really peels my grapes. Like, they should have won that game. Yeah, that's so frustrating. But I agree with you. Thanks for the comment, Jerry. Saint for life. Josh Dobbs rolls off the couch 1 week ago and beat the Saints like he's a Pro Bowler. Again, like I'll say that he did the same thing to the Falcons. So, it'll be interesting to see if he comes back to earth or if maybe they found something there. It's his team. Maybe he can like play Creed the whole way to the Super Bowl. I don't know. That would be a kind of a crazy story if
Well,
like you could deep run in the playoffs.
The touchdown run he had is absolutely ridiculous. And
He's way more athletic than I remember.
Right, exactly. I was like, who the hell, and then you look, he's only Lamar Jackson has more rushing yards as a quarterback, and you're like, oh, I get it.
Well, the other crazy thing is he only had 4 rushing yards in the second half of that game, but it wasn't just the rushing yards like that. Like it's not just QB's rushing that kills the Saints. It's extending plays.
Yeah, the escapability, right?
Like he had one, I think it was a third down that he was dead to rights, and then he just found a way to make a guy miss and just dump the ball to Hawkinson. And it was like, yeah, that's not going to go down as a QB rush, but man, his legs made that play. And so yeah, no, I mean, I remember watching him at Tennessee. I don't remember him being that athletic. Like I watched him last year with the Titans again in Tennessee.
And then I know he's not old, but he's like fairly, you could say he's a journeyman already.
He's been in the league since 2018. Came in the league the same like a year after Alvin, I think, or maybe the same year as Alvin.
It's just wild.
He was a 4th round pick.
Around so much.
Yeah, he was a 4th round pick in 2017. He's the same age as Alvin. Like he's been in the league since the same time Alvin has. He's just never gotten a chance to start. But I mean, like, at a certain point, it's like, yeah, you just gotta kind of hang around and get your chance. And if he had started as a rookie, he probably would have sucked. Because rookies suck. Unless you're CJ Stroud, apparently.
I'm surprised we have there. I don't know. I haven't seen anybody calling for Jake Haener.
Jake the Snake. I like Jake. I'm looking forward to seeing Jake. Don Tomasino, did y'all see how the O-line was just running around on the screenplays? Didn't touch nobody. Oh, trust me. I got a close look at that. It was bad. It's just frustrating because it's like they were set up. The screens were set up. They just failed. Like, you got one job. Find somebody. Knock them over, right? Like, you don't have to be perfect, but you do have to block somebody. And it was just like you have these gigantic bodies, and still Alvin is getting taken down. Like because you see like the play works, right? Like you see the rush, and they get baited upfield, and then you dump it off, and in your initial reaction is like, wow, we got the ball to Alvin in space. He's got a blocker he can work with. This should be a big play. No. That's so frustrating to me because when you go back and you're like, some of the marquee moments of the Breeze, Peyton, Kamara offense is those screens that you would just catch people with, and it was like 20 yards cake. Like he wasn't even like breaking into a sprint. It was just kind of like a light jog behind these big boys. And now it's like, it's like a panic attack every time he catches the ball. It's like he's getting hit from all sides. And man. But I agree.
We talk about, some of the changes maybe with staff stuff. I think O-line could be something in this offseason that you might look to do something there because it hasn't been working.
No, I agree. Let's get a couple more questions here and then take a quick break. St. John Butler says JPP can help stop the run if he has anything left in the tank. See, I don't think stopping the run has been a huge issue. I think this team is built to stop the run, and in most cases, they have been successful, right?
Except the quarterbacks.
Yeah. Well, right. Exactly. Like against the Colts, they run on everybody. Zach Moss and Jonathan Taylor, very good. You're going to let up rushing yards. Against the Texans, it's starting to feel like, man, the Texans are just a very good team. They run the ball too. They have good offensive line. CJ Stroud is keeping people honest. So those, I think you struggle to stop the run in that game. But, the Jags, they really didn't run the ball other than Trevor Lawrence. Like ETN, they got to the edges, but they didn't run the ball. You didn't see like traditional run plays. In this game, I felt like you stopped the run pretty effectively. The Bucs game was kind of in the middle. You only let up like 50 something rushing yards, but a lot of it was on first down. And to me, that's the thing is the first down run plays where they set themselves up in 2nd and 4. The situations the Saints got in and still failed. But like JPP is not coming in to be a rundowns player. If you're bringing in Jason Pierre-Paul, it's as a situational pass rusher, and I hate to say this, but like I don't think Cam needs to be on the field for all passing downs. And like, I think he still plays the run well. Like, that's part of the deal. Like, he's a run first player anyway, but I would not hate to see him maybe shift inside to the defensive tackle position and see if he can make some hay that way. And then you maybe get JPP on the outside. But either way, JPP is going to be a practice squad guy if you bring him in. And so you're talking about an elevation as opposed to, okay, he's there every week.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, the guy's been on the street, and I do think he can help the pass rush, but don't obviously expect miracles to happen either.
No, right. There's a reason he's still on the street right now. It's not because he's a dominant player that he once was. And
right, it's not going to be like Myles Garrett coming in tearing up shit.
Exactly. J-Rock, somebody explained to me how are the Saints still in first place in the division?
Well,
that's how math works first.
I'm going to introduce you to the Atlanta Falcons, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Carolina Panthers.
Well, the funny thing is, like, Josh Dobbs and Josh Dobbs' former team both beat the NFC South this week.
Right.
Which Kyler Murray had a great game. Kyler Murray led them down the field, but it's so funny. You look at the Falcons and the Saints, and you're in very similar situations. And, I think one of these coaches is going to be gone at the end of the year. I think one of them is. And if the other one's going to win the division.
Well, I mean, I know Arthur Smith's, the smoke's definitely coming from his chair because, you think about, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan, and it's like, why aren't these weapons getting utilized?
Oh, because the Falcons did the most, like, it's so obvious that they're doing the wrong thing and they continue to do it. Like, it's
right.
The Giants did. Like, the parallels between the Falcons and the Giants are hilarious with the end of Matt Ryan's career and the end of Eli Manning's career, right? The Falcons went with Kyle Pitts. The Giants went with Evan Ingram. The Falcons went with Bijan Robinson. The Giants went with Saquon Barkley. But what they forgot to do was draft linemen and get a quarterback, right? Like, we got all these weapons, but you have no one to get him the ball. And like, we're going to start Taylor Heineke. The Giants did it with Geno Smith because Eli couldn't. It's just hilarious that you can watch that exact scenario play out and fall right into that hole yourself because it's like, he's a unicorn. Come on. Don't draft the tight end in the top 10. Don't draft a running back in the top 10 unless you are a Super Bowl team. Unless, like, that's the only time it makes sense. Like, even the Panthers, like, Christian McCaffrey was one of the best running backs in football for a long time, but it's like, I still don't think that was the right draft pick. And you know who's benefiting from Christian McCaffrey right now? The team that was already going to win. And so now they're just better because of it. Like, those are the teams that should be going and getting those running backs, but it's always the bad teams that think, we're just one running back away. Like, no, you're never just one running back away. You're a team away.
Yeah, just another thing with the Niners too. It's nauseating to see them have a guy like Chase Young joining in, and you're like, great, you just amplified that defense even more.
Well, yeah, we had someone ask about, like, why didn't the Saints go at Chase Young? And here's the thing: like, when you are good already, you can afford to take those leaps, right? The Saints aren't in a position. Like, I don't want the Saints to be giving up third-round draft picks.
No, please don't. Right?
They don't have one. They don't have one to trade. So in order for the Saints to go at Chase Young, they might have to give up that second rounder from Denver. And that's a lot. Like, that's
hell no, right.
So are you going to do that? Or are you going to, so you don't have a third rounder to trade. So you're not going to trade that second rounder. So you're going to have to match the value. You're going to have to beat that 49ers third somehow. So you're going to give up a future third and maybe a future second. No, that's what everyone's mad about that they already did. So, like, no, they were right to not go after Chase Young once the price got to that third round. If it was a fourth rounder or a fifth rounder, maybe I could see it. Third rounder, absolutely not. That's a steep price for a guy who's a rental that you're going to have to pay. But all right, let's take a quick break, come back here, and we'll close out this special Inside Black and Gold mailbag edition. Thanks everyone who's here. Thanks everyone who's watching. Thanks everyone who's dropped in a comment. Appreciate y'all. As always, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. We will be right back. And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. One more segment here on this special mailbag edition, bye-week edition. You know, one thing we were talking about in the last segment, St. John Butler says, let's not compare DA to Tom Coughlin. I'm not comparing them. I'm just comparing, like, there was a lot of hate going at Tom. Until he won in the playoffs, everyone's like, he's not going to win. He can't win. That's all I'm saying. And suddenly he makes a run in the play. Like, they were a wild card team in 2008, right? Like, no one believed they could go win a Super Bowl. And then after that, it was like, he's the answer. He's got a lifetime contract. As long as he wants to stay, he'll stay. And like, I think that's what people are afraid of with DA, honestly, is that he wins enough games and then suddenly. But yeah, I mean, I'm not, as coaches, I'm not comparing them. I'm just talking about situationally. The thing here, Demetrius Ramsey says Eli Manning was way better than Carr. And I'm going to stop you right there, because the stuff that Derek Carr has had said about him his entire career, like, it's a lot of empty yards, he's not good enough in the red zone, he can't win big games. Everyone said that about Eli Manning basically his entire career. So, like, I actually think they're very similar quarterbacks, except one's name is Manning. So everyone was like, okay, he's definitely, they're both legacy quarterbacks, right? Like, they both have brothers who were number one picks too, or number one picks. Like, Eli was a number one pick, but Peyton was a number one pick. But, Derek obviously succeeded David, who the biggest record he has is he holds the NFL record for the most sacks in a season and the second most sacks in a season. Poor guy.
Yikes, right? You want to talk about shell shock.
But yeah, I think they have a little more in common than you might think, especially in today's NFL, where there's not many quarterbacks that don't really run. Like that scramble, man, that scramble where he got 9 yards of it. And it was like, how many quarterbacks in the NFL turn that into like a 30, 40-yard gain? You know what I'm talking about?
No, I'm trying to think.
It was like a 3rd and 10 in the first half, and he got 9 of it, and then got caught from behind and kind of got dragged down, and they ended up punting. And it's like, but like, how, like, so go around the NFL and just kind of say, like, okay, how many of these quarterbacks would have been like a 30 to 40-yard run, right? Whether it's Josh Allen, whether it's Lamar Jackson, even Baker Mayfield, like Derek is a good athlete, but not from a mobile perspective. Like, when he starts to run, you're like, God, why aren't you faster than that? Come on. You're a professional athlete, man. Have some respect.
You see recently the post, though, somebody put out was like comparing the first whatever X amount of games from Derek Carr, and then they put it like against Steve Young, Troy Aikman, and I forget who else. But I mean, his numbers are comparable, but it's really hard to just look at numbers.
Yeah, no, and to me, that's the thing for me. It's just frustrating to know that those yards are available and you can't get them. It's like they're locked in a box, right? Like, a lot of teams are able to access those yards, but the Saints are not. And it's a disadvantage. There's no way around it. It's a major disadvantage that the Saints have accepted, is that we do not have a system where we think the quarterback should have to be able to access those yards, those hidden yards in a game that Josh Dobbs found, right? That Trevor Lawrence found, that Tyson Bagent found, right? We are not trying to access those yards, and our offense has to succeed in spite of that. That's a disadvantage. The Lions are doing the same thing with Jared Goff. It's just something that, if you're going to accept that type of quarterback that can't really run, then you're going to have to live with it. And like Jake Haener.
Well, then if you do have that quarterback that can take off, he should be, his accuracy, precision should be like super duper, cutting edge, top of the league kind of thing. Then if you got to compensate kind of thing.
If you can't do that, if you can't access those yards, then you have to be elite. Yes. As in terms of diagnosing defenses and getting the ball out against the blitz. And that's what's frustrating, is because, like, I don't see that. I don't see like the baseline of a quarterback who can run around and do stuff is so much higher, because you can like Kyler Murray against the Falcons.
Holy crap! Right? That was a video game.
Right. He looks like Super Mario. Like,
yes.
He does run like super.
Me.
I put out a tweet, like, and not even like post mushroom Super Mario, like the
No.
small version. Just like he's just so like locked up. He kind of runs like Taysom Hill in that way, where it's like all legs and the upper body just stays perfectly still the whole time.
Yep.
But yeah, and it's frustrating, and that's why like people. Oh, there's the talk right now is, oh, maybe they can go draft Jaden Daniels. I would love to see the Saints draft Jaden Daniels. I absolutely would, as long as the idea is he's not starting right away. That is like my take that I will not give up on, is the idea that quarterbacks have to start immediately as a rookie is absolutely unequivocally wrong, and it ruins careers.
A lot of the time, yeah.
Like,
it's very rare that I think someone comes in and just immediately able to, adapt so easily without getting rattled.
Yeah, right. Like CJ Stroud is the exception. He's not the rule. And like, I would love a quarterback like Jaden Daniels. I would love, but like, I don't want him to come in and immediately be that guy. I also, I do get nervous about guys getting hurt, right? That's always the kind of catch-22 of okay, well, you can run, but what happens that time they catch you? And so like, I think Jaden is a guy who's gonna have to bulk up a little bit at the NFL level, and so maybe give him a year, right? Let him kind of get acclimated. But yeah, no, I think that the Saints would be foolish to avoid the quarterback position in this draft. And again, it's not about replacing Derek this next year. It's about you have an opportunity. You have an opportunity to draft a quarterback and not have to play him right away, right? Because you're paying it. You're paying the price to have that opportunity.
Yeah. To me, the Lions had that perfect scenario where they were able to get a guy like Hendon Hooker who needed that redshirt year. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. And so like, you got Jake Haener, he's an intriguing guy, but I don't think anyone's going to balk at upgrading if, there's a gift, for example, Jaden's still there in the second round and you really like him.
Hopefully like Haener could be our kind of like Dobbs, in case of emergency, he could come in and do something. But yeah, I don't see Haener as a starter in the NFL.
I mean, that's a bad comparison. because one of the reasons that Dobbs is Dobbs.
He is.
Well, no, I mean, it's not even being a rocket scientist. It's being a 6-year NFL veteran.
But he's still been a backup or a third stringer his career.
And that's helping him, is my point. Like, Jake's never played in an NFL game.
No, so I'm just saying, hopefully down the line, he could be that dude for the Saints. I don't know. I'm just like,
oh, you mean like in the future?
Yeah, I'm not saying, bring him in now and he's going to run rampant.
Yeah, for Jake,
that's probably all he could do at the moment.
Yeah, for Jake, is like the first question is, can you be a backup? And then if you can prove that you can hang around as a backup, then we'll see if you can be a starter. But like, I think Taylor Heineke is a good example of like a guy who is just good enough to be a backup, probably isn't good enough to be a starter, but is going to be, he's going to make a whole lot of money. Like that's not the worst thing in the world to be, is a guy who's just, look at Andy right now. You think Andy's mad about his situation? No. It's like, yeah, keep paying me. I'll keep showing up. I'll hold the clipboard.
You want me to hold the clipboard? Cool. You want me to start? Cool. Whatever you need, I got you.
Who was what was the guy's nickname? The nickname was Clipboard Jesus. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Not Chase Daniel, huh?
It wasn't Chase Daniel. He had long hair. Let's see.
All right.
Charlie Whitehurst. It was Charlie Whitehurst. Clipboard Jesus. And I'll share my screen so that you can appreciate how apt this nickname is.
The locks flowing.
They really are. Look at this. Has there ever been a better nickname than Clipboard Jesus for this man? Anyway,
it's a good living.
Right. Like, no one's complaining about being a backup quarterback, right? You when you get in the game, like, look at Jameis, right? Like the bar is so much lower because you're just like, man, he gave him a chance, win, right? That's all you have to do is not go in and maybe, if you win a game as a backup, you're a friggin' hero. If you lose, everyone's like, well, he's the backup. That's why he's the backup. So I don't know.
Right. That's what you can fall back on easily. Right.
Like the Giants lost by like 40 to the Cowboys, and everyone's like,
DeVito.
What happens when you start Danny DeVito? Then here's one that says, Red T, this draft is QB heavy. If JD5 slips down to us and we don't take him, I'll never forgive the Saints. We passed on Lamar and now JD5. Well, we haven't done it yet. So don't. No, I mean, yeah, I think if I really hope that, it's like, and I'm not as doom and gloom as everybody is. Like, again, like I said in the beginning, winning is winning. Like winning the division is winning the division, and no one's going to apologize for it, right? Like it's just, as a fan base, a home playoff game is cool, and you should enjoy it while it happens. But I do hope that this season is being looked at with clear eyes in that regard, and that you're not gonna don't try to pull the wool over people's eyes and pretend that like a 9-8 season with this schedule and this talent level on offense and defense is a success story. And we should all be like, no, there's no changes needed. We shouldn't be looking for the next quarterback. We shouldn't be looking for upgrades at offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, whatever. That would frustrate the hell out of me, and I think fans should have every right to say that no, this is organizational malpractice, because like it's obvious what's going on there, and sure, like things could get better, but I think we're 10 games into a season. Like people are like, what's the definition of this team? What's the story of this team? Like this has been defined. This team has been defined. Can they get better? Right, it's inconsistent. Can they get better? Sure. Can they get hot? Sure, but
can they get ice cold? Yep.
Yeah. The idea that there's growing pains, that we just haven't seen the full form yet, that it's like, oh, well, they just need more time. No, that's not the story. Like
more time.
You've seen what this team is, and while you have a chance this year to maybe get hot and make something happen, because that's the luxury. Look at Tom Brady, right? Like the Patriots won all these Super Bowls, right? They made the playoffs so many times. I don't think they necessarily had the best team every year, but they had the best playoff team, and they never had to worry about making the playoffs because the AFC East was the worst division in football for so long. Like no one talks about it because it had the Patriots in it. But that doesn't mean the division wasn't hot garbage, which it was. And it's funny because it's completely flipped. Now there's the other three teams in the division are good, and the Patriots are going to fire Bill Belichick probably. But yeah, I mean, like the idea that you would go into the draft and say, we've got it all figured out. We don't need to invest at the most important position would be foolish. The thing that I'll say is it still has not been proven empirically that the Saints would know the right quarterback if it was there. Because you've never, I mean, what quarterback has this regime drafted? Now it's like their claim to fame is wanting to draft Pat Mahomes.
Wanting to, right.
Wanting to. Like, and they won't stop talking about it. Sean will go to his grave telling that story. I knew he was the guy. Well, you didn't. You
were just about to take him.
You weren't bold enough to go up and trade up for him. So, because the Chiefs were. Anyway, it's so like that's the thing. Like,
I just don't know where are they projecting Jaden Daniels already in the NFL draft? I still think
early second.
Really?
Which early second at this time means high first next season. Like
bravo, right?
He's getting kind of the same. He's getting the Anthony Richardson treatment right now, right? I just noticed we're both wearing white shirts. This was not planned. It's our uniform.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So a couple more questions here. Saint for Life says Caden Ellis has 2 sacks. He hasn't done much this year. I honestly I can't tell you. I'll start watching more Falcons games now.
Right.
I'm getting ready to go, for the Saints play the Falcons, but I couldn't tell you high or low in terms of how they have played on defense. But yeah, I mean, I think everyone, Trey Hendrickson is a guy that everyone's like, he got away and suddenly he's great.
Man, he got hurt. You saw that one?
Yeah, he got hurt.
That was terrible.
I think everyone's kind of looking at Caden Ellis the same way. I don't know. I think Caden's a good player, but they overpaid him. And so now he has the task of living up to that contract, and it's going to be tough to do. But yeah, I'm rooting for him. I like the guy. He's a great kid. I call him a kid. He's not that young.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking here. He's tied for the team lead in tackles with 73.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's an every down linebacker, right?
4 tackles for loss, 2, a pass defensed. That's all right. Nothing. I mean, yeah, but you would expect, obviously, for the contract he got, he would have had, I don't know, at least 6 sacks, I think, right now.
Yeah. Big Irv also still not convinced that Taylor is the answer at slot. Yeah, I don't think that's gone particularly well. I think it started well, and I don't think you've seen the growth from him at that position that you would have hoped for. I mean, he's still, that's not an easy transition to make. I think he's still learning. I think that's one of the examples of like, I'm not gonna say like, well, he can't do it at this point, but it's definitely hasn't been that type of performance that you're like, he is no brainer slot corner. The frustrating thing is like, it's the only way you can get him on the field right now, and I wouldn't. So do you consider moving him outside if Marshon misses time and maybe maybe going to an Ugo Amadi? I don't know. I mean, I don't think you'd upgrade in the slot with Ugo Amadi, but would you maybe upgrade on the outside? I don't know, because Ike played really well.
I personally, and I don't know, I have nothing basing off this. I just don't feel like Alante's happy in that slot role.
It's a tough, like, not a lot, like, I don't think Bradley loved it either. Like, I think that it's just not a position. It's why you see safeties, right? Because, I think safeties kind of profile better into coming down and playing that kind of hybrid linebacker role. Whereas corners, it's a more difficult transition because you're used to just being man up. It's, and you got the sideline and you get chances for, PBUs. And now you're trying to chase TJ Hawkinson. And that's no cornerback comes into the league and is like, oh, I desperately want to cover tight ends.
So maybe you get Alante with Paulson and then maybe Howden.
Yeah, Howden could be an option. That's a good point. I don't know. I think you still want Howden to be your dime safety kind of guy, but maybe that is something you look at is who's your best option at slot corner if you decide, okay, we want to move Alante outside. But again, Ike has been really good outside. Right. So I don't even know if that's an upgrade. Like Alante has been good too when he's had the opportunity, but would you be better? Then you're changing 2 positions instead of 1. And just logic would dictate that you'd rather not do that. Right. And you haven't, and Alante has been laser focused on the slot. He has not been focused on the outside. So that would be a change. So who knows? Maybe that would hurt him on the outside. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a question to answer. I expect you'll see Alante stay in the slot though. Maybe next year you can talk about the options there, but yeah.
No, I'll definitely be curious to see what happens. Like you said, if Lattimore, hopefully we don't have to worry about that. And Latt is back for the Falcons game. Week 12 for crying out loud.
Correct. Let's see. Just want to get to.
I think it's funny that people are saying Frank Reich should be fired. I was like, well, Frank Reich didn't even get to pick his quarterback.
There's just no leash in the NFL anymore, man. That's the frustrating thing. Let's see. Trying to find one more solid question here. Not to say there's not a lot of good questions, but there's a lot of stuff we've gone over. I'm trying to hit something new that we haven't hit yet.
I was trying to. The tight end situation remains a mystery, and I guess along with other things that just perplexing in this season is just not being able to find Juwan. Like after Foster's, awful, no good, terrible drop in the end zone, we don't even look at him anymore. And then Jimmy Graham's just chilling on the sidelines in his gear.
I don't get it. And it's funny because like you could say like, oh, maybe it's just a Derek Carr thing. Maybe he just doesn't feel comfortable throwing to certain guys. But like substantively, Juwan and Darren Waller are similar players. Like if he could make Darren Waller into a superstar, you'd think that would be a comfort level thing for him that he would want to take advantage of. He knows Foster, but for some reason he just hasn't been throwing to tight ends. And last week he did, and then everyone complained he didn't throw to Mike Thomas instead.
Sadly, you say Waller, and now I put Hawkinson in that same category.
Hawkinson was really good. He's kind of a weird looking dude, but he's really good.
Yeah.
Um,
He's not scoring Taylor Swift.
that is true. He's definitely not. Okay. I don't see anything here. Here's one. Okay, so the one thing that is worth noting, so the Saints have beaten the Titans, the Panthers, the Patriots, the Colts, and the Bears.
Bears.
That's a rough list of like, oh, these are the teams we're better than. Because
Right.
everyone's better than them. Those
And
might
they've
be the
lo-
5 worst teams in the league, other than the Colts. Colts are in the middle. Colts are about where the Saints are. They're 5-5.
No, it's obviously that it doesn't give you, you know, a ringing endorsement of what they've accomplished right now. I mean, right, you've lost to Vikings, Jags, Texans, Bucks, and of course the wonderful Green Bay Packers.
Yeah. Here's one. Boom bam. As a Vikings fan, I assumed Taysom Hill was injured. Only thing that would make sense. I'm sure Minnesota defense had him factored in. Yeah. And it's like you could say like, oh, he might not have the scheme they're running. It wouldn't have been particularly effective, but like, yeah.
Do they totally want to ignore the stat of them being 17-1?
That stat is
It's like we're gonna prove them wrong, and then it's like, oh shit, we should have got him the ball.
The stat is it is not. I mean, it's a stat that exists, but that doesn't mean it's like you think if they ran Taysom 7 times in that game, they would have won.
Yep, that's the power of Taysom.
Just
Taysom to me is like that superhero running down the field.
I guess, yeah. I mean, maybe magically the score line would have changed, and it'd be like the Space Jam moment where they lose 10 points without any explanation.
I don't know. Prove it wrong for me, please, because that's
true.
That's what is
I'll
working.
give you that. I'll give you that. Like, at least if they prove it incorrect, then we can stop talking about it. What was the one loss? What was the one? Oh, I know what. You know, and the one it sounds like the Matrix. The one is even like it's an asterisk because the one is that game against the Cowboys where he was actually starting at quarterback.
Oh, okay.
So it's not even a good example of like
dun dun dun.
Yeah. So like realistically, if you're talking about Taysom in Taysom's role, but you would have to eliminate some of the wins there too. But like, I don't know, maybe 3-4 of those games. So it'd probably be closer to like 12-0. But so you could say like when in games Taysom is not starting a quarterback, they have never lost if they've given him 7 or more carries.
I don't know.
Would be nice.
To me, too, it's very telling. Alvin Kamara said this year he called him a bully for crying out loud. I'm like, give that man the ball more and let him bully everybody.
He is a bully. They should just give him they should just run Taysom the first 7 plays of the game, and then everyone goes back in the locker room.
There you go. Right.
Oh, I guess we're done here.
And give him that speech, fire everybody up, and then boom, we're ready to go.
Next week. It's over. Not even worth playing. Everyone
there
just
you
goes
go. Let's next time you talk to Dennis, you see Dennis Allen on the sideline, be like, I got this idea.
I think he actually said that. I think I stole that joke from him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think he said that on to Bobby once because Bobby always brings that up. Like the worst thing we could have done was tell Bobby that stat. Anyway, all right, that's it. Anything else you want to hit, and then we'll get out of here.
Definitely need to hit more of the bourbon cast for the bye week, I think, because we got, like you said, material to fill and some fun football to break down as we get ready for the next team.
Well, as long as it's not $27 a glass, I'll be all in on that idea. But that wasn't even this podcast that I told that story. That's how far we've come in this world. But this is Inside Black and Gold. Thanks everyone for listening. It's been a special mailbag edition. Appreciate everyone who's here, everyone who dropped in a comment, question. If you have questions that weren't answered, you want to hit me up on Twitter. It's at Jeff_Nowak. You can hit up Steve at Steve Geller, WWL. You can check out WWL.com for the latest news, notes, and analysis. We got takes from Bobby, takes from Deuce up there, 3 up, 3 down. A lot of the stuff we talked about this week on the podcast. You can go check it out. And without further ado, let's wrap this up. Saints on a bye. So are we. I'm looking forward to a week where I can just hang out and watch football. I don't get to do that very often. So that's fun. And who dat? Go Saints still. What you got? Yeah, Steve.
Number 1 in the South. No, that's it.
Still number 1. Unless the Bucs can beat the 49ers, then we're number 2. But,
and you know what? If that happens, more power to the freaking Bucs for pulling that off. And you know what? The way this season has been, wouldn't surprise me either. Why not?
yeah, well, they beat the Jags by like 35-3 or something like that. Jesus. They had lost 4 in a row, come back, and the Jags had won 5 in a row. And the 49ers, I don't know. It's all
Exactly.
But all right. Thanks, everyone, for watching, listening. As always, who dat? Go Saints. Peace out, y'all. Be easy.
Get well, Marshon.